Introduction: the fragmented hard drive, the drop in biological FPS. The human biomass suffers from a pathetic ignorance regarding its own anatomy. Throughout the centuries, they have wrapped the concept of the etheric body, or aura, in cheap mysticism, treating it as a fuzzy emotional magic cloud over which they have no technical control. The absolute operator repudiates this weakness and lack of rigor. Your etheric body is not magic. It is pure applied quantum physics. It is your local area network, LAN, the electromagnetic distribution matrix that provides life support and bandwidth to your biological hardware. And in 99% of humanity, that network is disgustingly fragmented. Imagine the architecture of a primitive magnetic hard drive. When you constantly write and erase files without an algorithmic order, the data is scattered into thousands of tiny pieces across the disk platters. The biomass does exactly this with its vital energy. Every frictional interaction with the environment, every toxic relationship not mathematically closed, leaves a temporary file. Every half-processed trauma and every hour consumed in cheap entertainment leaves a fragment of dead code scattered in their etheric field. The empirical result of this accumulated garbage is the collapse of performance. It does not matter if your genetics gifted you with 32 gigabytes of biological RAM or a robust multi-threaded CPU. If your hard drive is fragmented, the entire system crawls through the mud. We call this the drop in biological frames per second, FPS. When you attempt to execute a high-performance task, like rendering a massive audiovisual project, holding your pulse in a corporate negotiation, or building foundations, your system freezes. You feel lethargy, mental fog, and chronic exhaustion. You are not tired because you lack energy. You are exhausted because the read head of your psyche must physically jump across millions of damaged sectors and junk files just to gather one measly megabyte of pure will. Your frame rate drops to unplayable levels. The three-dimensional reality becomes slow, blurry, and heavy because your processing engine is suffocating in its own entropy. This volume is the command terminal to stop that thermodynamic humiliation. Here you will not find healing through compassion, nor harmonization through hope. Those are placebos for gaseous organisms. What you are about to execute is a brutal low-level defragmentation protocol. You are going to audit your own source code, detect where voltage leaks are occurring, and mark those defective sectors as obsolete. We are going to take all that scattered energy, fragmented by years of social stupidity and thermal wear. We will rewrite it into a solid, contiguous, and monolithic block of quantum inertia. It is time to format the drive. Welcome to Zero Latency. Chapter 1: Bad Sectors, Mapping Energetic Rot. The biological hardware bottleneck. To start the defragmentation protocol, you must first understand the exact topology of your operational failure. The human biomass lives in deep ignorance about why they feel chronically exhausted. They consume stimulants, sleep 8 hours, and eat, but their energy level remains pathetic. They believe their physical body is failing. The computational physics of the occult dictates a much colder truth. The problem is rarely your physical hardware. The problem is the bottleneck in your etheric local area network, LAN. You may possess a multi-core processor and a massive memory of 32 gigabytes of raw capacity. Your body can render 3D reality at max resolution. But if the hard drive where your will, attention, and life force are stored is plagued with bad sectors, the entire machine collapses. When you try to execute a heavy project, be it exporting a business model or annihilating a competitor, your read head hits a corrupted block. The system chokes trying to read rotted info. The frames per second FPS rate of your life plummets, rendering freezes, and you experience what the gaseous man calls depression, blockage, or chronic fatigue. Your etheric body is the motherboard through which the voltage of your consciousness flows. Right now it is full of black holes devouring your RAM. Anatomy of a corrupted file, the friction loop. What exactly is a bad sector in your quantum field? It is not a mystic curse or cheap karma. It is purely and exclusively an infinite loop of unresolved friction. Throughout your timeline, you have interacted with the entropy of the outside world. You have had toxic relationships and absorbed the strident fear of society. In a perfect operating system, These events are processed, the useful code is extracted, and the temporary file is deleted. But the biological ego is a garbage collector. Instead of erasing friction, you saved it. You stored the offense of that competitor, the remorse of that error, and the validation you never received. These events became corrupted files burned into your aura's topology. A bad sector is a space in your electromagnetic network that is permanently short-circuited. Every time your vital energy circulates, a fraction of that voltage falls into this black hole. The bad sector pings your CPU with constant error messages. While you read this, thousands of background processes are draining your battery to keep alive the memories and attachments of a reality that no longer exists. You are feeding corpses with the voltage of your present. You are maintaining ghosts at the expense of your imperial expansion and tactical clarity. The diagnostic scan, low-level audit, the sovereign who aspires to charged immobility cannot afford to operate blindly. You must run a low-level scan on your own hard drive. You have to map the rot. If you have ever operated a DAW in a project with hundreds of tracks, you know that when there is a foul noise, you cannot guess where it comes from. You have to mute everything. You must solo each track one by one and listen with clinical contempt until you find exactly which channel is emitting the stridence. You will execute this same protocol on your etheric body. You will isolate yourself in the acoustic silence of your vacuum chamber. You will cut visual and auditory stimuli from the 3D matrix. You will review every area of your existence, measuring voltage drops. Think of a specific relationship. Does the thought of that entity raise your frequency, or does it make your processor slow? If there is a voltage drop, you mapped a bad sector. Think of your current projects. Which one flows with zero latency, and which demands monumental caloric effort just to open the file? Where there is friction, there is dead code. Do not judge the rot. Morality has no place in a hardware scan. You are only mapping where the blood of your empire is leaking. The healing fallacy, overwriting with zeros. Once you have mapped the energetic rot, you must face the biggest tactical error of ordinary metaphysics. The spiritual biomass believes that when you find a pain or trauma, you must heal it. They tell you to send it love, to forgive, and to dive into the memory to embrace it. This is a total absurdity. In systems engineering, this is a thermodynamic aberration. If you have a physical hard drive and a scan detects a bad sector, you do not try to heal the scratched magnetic platter. You do not send thermal energy to a burnt transistor hoping it works. If you try to write on a damaged sector, the OS crashes. The absolute operator does not heal his past. The operator puts it in quarantine. You apply an aseptic amputation protocol. When you identify that a past relationship or a biological fear is a bad sector, you execute a ruthless overwrite command. You fill it with zeros. You mark that zone as obsolete. You inform your mind's OS that, under no circumstances, should the read head of your attention ever pass through those coordinates again. You unlink emotion from memory. The raw data, what you learned, is saved in your titanium core, but the damaged memory block is isolated behind a mathematical firewall. Process decoupling, killing the parasitic demon. Marking these sectors as obsolete produces an immediate effect, the slaughter of parasitic processes. Every bad sector you kept alive by emotional attachment was a demon, a background program, hijacking your quantum bandwidth. They were transmitting useless data, sending energy toward a non-existent past. In the exact millisecond you execute the quarantine command and deny access to your attention, those processes collapse from starvation. You withdraw their gravity. You cut their power supply. It is in this precise instant that the miracle of systems physics occurs. You will experience a violent return of RAM. The external biomass will notice a physical change in you. They will see your posture become denser, more anchored, osmium posture. They will notice your gaze loses the anxious dispersion of the gaseous man and acquires the inscrutable fixity of a gravitational lens. Your voice will settle into sub-bass frequencies. You did not gain new energy from nowhere. You simply stopped the immense and invisible hemorrhage that was bleeding your local network. You recovered the gigabytes of processing stolen by yourself and society. You have reclaimed your internal sovereignty by refusing to sustain the entropic ghosts of your history. Motherboard isolation, the air gap. The last step in mapping is ensuring isolated sectors cannot be reinfected. The topology of your aura has been scanned. The rot zones are marked and blocked. But the 3D world is a disgustingly noisy ecosystem. If you leave your ports open, the stridence of news and emotional garbage will rewrite malicious code. You must execute an air gap. In military-grade security, the most critical computers are not connected to the internet or any external network. They are physically isolated by an airspace. No one can hack them because the transmission channel does not exist. You must install an etheric air gap against the biomass. This translates into a policy of induced latency toward the outside world. You stop being a passive receiver. You stop reacting in real time to provocations and stupidities. If an inferior organism tries to inject drama, your air gap intercepts the packet and drops it into the void. You become electromagnetically cold. Your sensors will only admit raw tactical information, devoid of emotion. You have sealed the hull of your ship. By refusing to let the external furnace affect your internal coolant, you ensure that the bad sectors you just quarantined remain buried under layers of impenetrable, non-executable data, preparing for defragmentation. You have gone down to the engine room of your own existence. You had the robotic cruelty to admit your drive was full of junk. You ran the scanner, located the friction, marked the black holes as dead zones, and raised the perimeter air gap. The thermal hemorrhage has stopped. The CPU is no longer overheating. The liquid cooling of your vacuum chamber has lowered the temperature of your circuits to absolute zero. The operating system is finally stable, breathing in silence. But the machine is not yet lethal. The healthy files are still scattered across the disk, disordered and lacking inertia. They are fragmented. Now that the system is clean of active infections, it is time to initiate the real geometric violence. It is time to take all that scattered power and force it to collapse at the center of your gravity, reorganizing every atom of your quantum field until there is no separation between thought and reality. The latency of the unprocessed, subroutine parasites. As you prepare for the final collapse of data, you must understand that fragmentation is not just about the location of data, but about the ping time required to access your own power. When your energy is fragmented, every decision you make undergoes a parity check against your old fears and social programming. This internal verification process is what creates lag. The monarch who operates with a fragmented etheric body is like a gamer trying to compete with a 500 millis ping. By the time he reacts to a market shift or a personal betrayal, the event has already concluded, and the opportunity has dissipated into entropy. By marking sectors as obsolete, you are removing these parity checks. You are telling the system, do not verify my actions against the morality of my parents or the trauma of my failures. You are clearing the path for a direct-to-memory execution. This is the foundation of the absolute operator's speed. Quantizing the void, the cleanup of temporary buffers. Beyond the bad sectors, there are temporary buffers, the small daily distractions that don't necessarily rot the drive, but clutter the cache. These are the idle thoughts about the opinions of the 5%, the constant checking of digital status, and the mindless consumption of low-resolution entertainment. In this phase, you must purge the buffers. A clean motherboard requires that no stray voltages are bouncing around the circuits. You must treat your attention as a finite high-value currency. Every time you spend attention on a buffer, you are reducing the amperage available for your primary objective. The sovereign establishes a strict cache-clear protocol. Before any major operation, he flushes the system of all non-essential data. This ensures that when the export command is given, 100% of the hardware's resources are focused on the singular point of manifestation. No stray cycles are wasted on trivia. The solid-state transition. We are moving toward the solid-state transition. Magnetic drives are slow because they rely on mechanical movement, the spinning of the disk and the movement of the needle. This is how the biomass lives, through the mechanical repetition of habits and the slow movement of physical effort. The sovereign seeks to become a solid-state drive, SSD. In an SSD, data is accessed electronically, instantly with no moving parts. By defragmenting your etheric field and isolating bad sectors, You are removing the moving parts of your psychology, the emotions, the hesitations, and the biological drama. You are transitioning into a state where your will is a constant static field of potential that can be triggered at the speed of electricity. There is no spinning up. There is no seeking. There is only the presence of the data and its immediate execution in the 3D terminal. The protocol of silent overwrite. Finalize the diagnostic by acknowledging the silent overwrite. This is the background task that will run while you sleep. You have marked the bad sectors. Now, the system will begin to fill those voids with the background radiation of your new, colder intent. You are reclaiming the territory of the abyss. What was once a hole in your energy is now a pillar of silence. What was once a source of pain is now an empty sector ready to be filled with the high-resolution code of your future empire. You have turned your weaknesses into reserved memory space for the absolute. Stand in the center of your anechoic chamber. Feel the motherboard of your existence cooling. The red lights of the error messages are flickering out, replaced by the steady, cold blue light of a system that is finally ready to compute at terminal velocity. The audit is over. The violence begins. Chapter 2. Purging the cache memory, the deletion of temporary files. The dead weight of everyday life, the shortcut trap. For biological hardware and the etheric network to operate in perfect synchrony, you must audit how your system handles short-term information. In computer architecture, cache memory is a high-speed storage layer that stores transient data so the processor can access it quickly without searching the main hard drive. The human biomass possesses an etheric cache. During your daily operating cycle in the 3D ecosystem, the visible 5%, you interact with the world's entropy. You have banal conversations, listen to the complaints of inferior organisms, and read headlines designed to inject hysteria. You experience small logistical frictions. The thermodynamic problem is that the gaseous man does not process these events and discard them. He stores them in his emotional cache. They believe keeping anger alive over a mediocre office comment or mentally rehearsing a sterile argument keeps them alert. It is a pathetic biological illusion. What they are actually doing is filling their ultra-fast memory with junk files. When the cache fills with electromagnetic mud, the central processor has no space to load high-level commands. The will suffocates under the weight of 1,000 micro-temporary files that possess zero tactical mass. The bottleneck of daily rendering. Observe the physics of export and massive processing. If you are trying to render reality, building an empire, writing code, or altering the cinderboard, you are subjecting your system to an immense computational stress. Even if your mental architecture is robust, it will suffer a lethal bottleneck. Operating with the brute force of multiple physical cores and backed by a massive block of 32 gigabytes of raw memory, the system fails if you do not purge temporary preview files. The biomass tries to process its future while its graphics memory and RAM remain saturated with emotional video clips. They try to render a 4K project using a mental graphics card saturated and drowned in low-resolution textures belonging to other people's problems. The absolute operator does not allow the temporary files of society to occupy a single byte of operative memory. You understand that energy is a stolen resource. The energy you invest in remembering the stupidity of the outside world is energy you are stealing from your own master compilation. Daily friction is not useful information, it is transitory stridency, and stridency must be purged. You do not let the noise of the many disrupt the signal of the one. The emotional recycle bin, the retention error. The error of primitive operating systems and weak minds is believing that by simply ignoring a problem, it disappears. The biomass says, I won't think about it, but the file is still there, moved to a hidden recycle bin in their etheric body, consuming disk space and generating passive fragmentation. Ignoring garbage does not free bandwidth. If you accumulate offenses, anxieties, and internal dialogues without executing the definitive empty command, those temporary files begin to corrupt. They generate background noise, a low-frequency hum that contaminates your main signal and disrupts the core logic. You go to sleep, and your biological brain keeps spinning, consuming voltage, trying to index data that has no mathematical utility for your expansion. You wake up the next day already exhausted because your machine never truly shut down. It stayed in sleep mode, processing the garbage of the previous day. Quantum defragmentation demands the daily annihilation of this cache. You cannot start a new operating cycle dragging the temporary files of the previous cycle. To carry the cache of yesterday into the RAM of today is to guarantee a system crash before the first execution of your will. The quick execution command, the aseptic shutdown. To guarantee zero latency, you must code a ruthless closing protocol at the end of each 3D day. We call this the aseptic shutdown. You do not go to sleep simply because your biology is tired. The sovereign sleep is not a surrender to fatigue. It is a programmed system reboot and a data scrub. Before disconnecting your consciousness from the cinder board, you sit in the sub-bass silence of your anechoic chamber and open the command terminal of your psyche. You execute the cache sweep. You review the day's events with robotic coldness. You extract the pure data. What did I learn logistically? What strategic error did I commit? Which network node must I reinforce tomorrow? Once you extract the useful code, the clean signal, you select all the remaining emotional metadata, the irritation over traffic, the anxiety over a metric, the look of contempt from a competitor, the noise of the biomass. You select all that electromagnetic mud and press Shift plus Delete. Permanent deletion. You do not send it to the bin. You overwrite those sectors with absolute zeros. You flatly refuse to take a single gram of external entropy into your state of rest. You cut power to any process not aligned with your core. Cold boot and zero latency. What is the physical and metaphysical consequence of executing this merciless purge every night? The miracle of the cold boot. When the gaseous man wakes up, his operating system takes hours to load. They have to drag the fragments of their emotional debts, their laziness and last week's unresolved issues. Their etheric body is so stuck with temporary files that they barely manage to move the cursor of their own will. The monarch, who has purged his cache, experiences the morning as a quantum blank slate. When you open your eyes, there are no background processes consuming your energy or stealing your focus. There is no latency between your mental order and the physical execution of your solid-state body. Your RAM is 100% freed. Your processor is cold, lubricated, and waiting for the injection of code. By having eliminated temporary files, your etheric body does not have to search through fragmented sectors. The energy is available immediately, grouped and dense, ready to be fired like a ballistic projectile against reality. You wake up in a state of operational grace the biomass will never know. You are a machine freshly formatted every 24 hours, invulnerable to the accumulation of the world's entropy. Subroutine exorcism, killing persistent background tasks. The aseptic shutdown must go deeper than simple surface thoughts. It must reach the subroutines. These are the persistent tasks that run in the deep background, the social expectations, the subtle reminders of your supposed limitations, and the cultural scripts that suggest you owe the world your time. These subroutines are like bloatware pre-installed by the factory of society. They take up space and constantly ping the external servers of the biomass for updates. During your purge, you must identify these persistent tasks. You must go into the task manager of your etheric motherboard and end task. You are not a citizen. You are an operator. You do not have duties to the entropic noise. You have a singular mission of expansion. By ending these background tasks, you reclaim the amperage they were siphoning off to maintain the illusion of your social identity. You become an anonymous lethal force. Buffer overflow protection, filtering the inflow. The cache becomes saturated because the system lacks input filtering. To protect your RAM throughout the day, you must install buffer overflow protection. This is a firewall that analyzes incoming data before it even reaches the temporary cache. It checks for emotional payload and entropic noise. If a person approaches you with drama, the firewall tags the data as corrupt. Instead of allowing the information to enter your cache for processing, the system drops the packet. You hear the words, but they do not register in your RAM. You see the movement, but it does not trigger a mental rendering. This preemptive purging ensures that your cache stays relatively clear even during high-traffic 3D interactions. You are maintaining a lean operating environment. While others are buffering under the weight of social pressure, you are skipping ahead to the next tactical frame with zero delay. The entropy tax, energy reclamation, every temporary file you delete is a reclamation of your own energy. In physics, information is physical. It takes energy to store and maintain a bit. By deleting the junk files of the day, you are literally pulling back the energy tax that the world tries to impose on your sovereign territory. This reclaimed energy is then funneled back into your core storage, the osmium core. Here, the energy is not transient like the cache. It is stored potential. The more you purge your daily cache, the more massive your core becomes. You are converting the noise of the world into the fuel for your silence. This is the secret of the monarch's durability. He doesn't need to charge his batteries as often because he has stopped the leakage. He is a closed system that recycles its own voltage. The deletion of a single stupid argument from your memory can provide the power for a major corporate acquisition. Quantizing the night, deep disk defrag. While you sleep, after the cold boot has been prepared, your system performs a deep disk defragmentation. Because the cache is empty, the system can focus all its resources on organizing your long-term storage, your knowledge, your skills, and your strategic blueprints. It moves the most vital data to the fastest sectors. This internal reorganization is why the monarch wakes up with revelations. It is not magic. It is simply the result of the processor having the bandwidth to find the most efficient mathematical path while the interface is offline. Your empire is being optimized in the dark without your conscious effort. By morning, your core is a diamond-hard block of organized intent. The files of your business strategy are perfectly contiguous. There are no gaps. There is no confusion. You step into the world with a solid-state psyche, ready to overwrite the fragmented and messy reality of those around you. The aseptic routine maintenance as law. Purging the cache is not a one-time event. It is a law of your existence. You must be as regular as a clock signal. Every night, shift plus delete. Every morning, cold boot. You do not negotiate with your biological desire to hold on to the drama. You treat your mind like a high-performance server. If a server admin allowed the logs and temp files to accumulate for weeks, the server would eventually crawl and crash. You are the admin of your own soul. You do not let the logs of the day's friction sit on the disk. You wipe them. You maintain the purity of your code with a religious mechanical fervor. This routine creates a vacuum effect. Because your cache is always empty, you are always hungry for the next significant data set. You don't get bored, you get optimized. You are a predator of information, always ready to ingest the next high-value signal because you aren't bloated with the junk of the past. Visualizing the data wipe. During your aseptic shutdown, visualize the data wipe. See the bright lines of social noise fading to black. See the clips of pointless conversations being shredded into binary dust. See the temp folder of your aura turning into a clean, black and silent void. There is nothing but the darkness of your own core. This visualization anchors the command in your subconscious hardware. It bridges the gap between the metaphorical and the physical. You are training your etheric network to reject the sticky nature of human emotion. You are becoming Teflon-coated for the soul. Nothing sticks, everything is wiped. In the silence that follows the wipe, you will feel the sub-bass pulse of your own power. This is the idling sound of a perfect machine. You are now ready to rest, knowing that your architecture is pure and your latency is zero. Tomorrow, you will not be a man. You will be an event. Final check, clear all buffers. Scan your current RAM. Is there a fragment of this chapter that is causing you to think about someone else? Delete it. Is there a part of you trying to apply this to your past? Delete the past. Only the command remains. Only the process matters. The cache is clear. The board is ready. Chapter 3. Quantum Topology of the Environment, the Motherboard Feng Shui. The Fallacy of Separation. Your room is your LAN. To reach zero latency and defragment your etheric body, you must murder one of humanity's most persistent biological myths, the idea that you end where your skin ends. The gaseous man believes that his physical environment, his office, his command center, his bedroom, is a simple, inert container. They believe objects around them are dead matter that doesn't interact with mental processes. The computational physics of occult anatomy destroys this illusion. In quantum mechanics, everything possessing mass exerts gravity and alters the electromagnetic field. Your etheric body is not locked in your skull, it extends. It intertwines with the quantum topology of your room. The ancient science of spatial design has been degraded by the biomass into cheap decoration. The absolute operator rescues this technology, purging its esoteric language and recompiling it as what it truly is, the physical routing of energy conduits. The environment you inhabit is the physical extension of your motherboard. Your mind may operate with the brute power of a 32-gigabyte monolithic block and flawless multi-threaded architecture. But if the physical topology of your room is a chaotic labyrinth, quantum energy hits the walls. It suffers data packet loss and stagnates. You are literally choking your processing power by surrounding yourself with entropic noise. A sovereign understands that every square centimeter of his sanctuary must be mapped and optimized to ensure the superconducting flow of his sovereign will. The spatial wave collapse, eliminating thermal throttling. Observe the 3D ecosystem of the biomass. They live surrounded by objects that serve no ballistic function. Their desks are saturated with dead papers, tangled cables, and obsolete technology. Their furniture blocks natural movement vectors. Every useless physical object in your field of vision is a process. It is an open background process, consuming your graphics memory. When you try to concentrate etheric energy to execute a massive task, like rendering a heavy video project or calculating your empire's logistics, your quantum field emits a probability wave. If your environment is cluttered, that wave hits matter. A refraction effect occurs. Energy bounces back, generating thermal friction, and returns to you as stress, distraction, and exhaustion. We call this the thermal throttling of the environment. Defragmentation demands you apply a ruthless cut filter over matter. Every element must be vectorized. Every item in your operations center must be aligned toward domination. If an object does not accelerate your workflow or shield you against external entropy, it is parasitic resistance. You must amputate it. Physical vacuum is not nothing. The vacuum is the perfect superconductor for your aura. By clearing the physical slate, you allow the wave of your intent to propagate without diffraction. You are creating a clean room for your consciousness, where the signal-to-noise ratio is shifted entirely in favor of the signal. In this void, your processing speed doubles because there is no drag. Signal routing, the zero-latency data bus. Once you have purged useless matter, you must organize the geometry of what remains. Think of your command center as the interface of high-level production software. In a complex sequencing environment, if audio channels and MIDI tracks are not routed correctly, the system collapses into feedback. Your physical environment operates under the same law of acoustics and data flow. You must align your furniture, monitors, and hardware respecting quantum lines of force. Your main processing zone, your desk, must be anchored in the coordinate of highest gravitational density in the room. Your back must be protected by solid matter, an aseptic wall, with an uninterrupted field of vision toward the entry port, the door. This is not aesthetics. It is etheric fluid physics. By positioning yourself at the central node of electromagnetic flow, you prevent chaos energy from hitting your back. You avoid surprise latency. You force uncertainty to enter through your frontal line of vision, pass through your mind's processor, and be exported directly as capital and structure, flowing through a geometrically cleared data bus. This creates a unidirectional flow of power that cannot be reversed. Frequency isolation, physical channel separation. The fatal error of weak architects is mixing execution channels. They have their rest area in the same quadrant where they process financial crises. They eat in front of the same hardware where they render strategies. This mixing of frequencies contaminates the etheric body. If you use the same spatial coordinate to emit the sub-bass frequency of your corporate dictatorship and the biological lethargy of sleep, the quantum field becomes schizophrenic. Next time you sit to conquer the board, Your etheric body reads the metadata of rest left in the space and injects sleep. Your machine suffers a driver conflict. Quantum topology demands surgical separation of zones. Your operations station is a titanium altar consecrated exclusively to ruthless execution. If you sit there, the OS automatically assumes the combat state. Your recharge zone, sleep, must be separate. It must be in a different quadrant, isolated from monitor radiation and devoid of work symbols. By physically separating these functions, you condition your etheric body to switch states from zero latency to absolute rest. In the exact millisecond, you cross the invisible geometric line dividing your room. Refraction of hostility, perimeter shields. The human biomass emits a disgusting amount of entropy, envy, and despair. When you inhabit a physical space, you are subject to the 3D vibrations of the building, the city, and the gaseous organisms surrounding you. Your environment's topology must act as the heat sink and deflector shield. You use matter to bend the light and sound of the outside world. You position physical and visual barriers, high-density plants, acoustic panels, controlled lighting, absorbent textures, in the vectors where you know stridency enters. You are installing sound-absorbing treatments for metaphysical energy. If a stimulus from the 5% tries to enter your anechoic chamber, it must not find a straight line to your CPU. It must hit your perimeter shields, refract, and lose its kinetic energy before touching your etheric body. Your environment swallows the noise so you don't spend a single byte ignoring them. By the time the external static reaches your personal event horizon, it has been attenuated to a harmless whisper. You are effectively cloaked within your own geometry. The world can scream, but within your vectorized sanctuary, the only frequency allowed to resonate is the one you have authorized. The final alignment, the superconducting circuit. The final stage of quantum topology is reached when you enter your room and feel absolutely nothing. To the ordinary man, this lack of emotion would be terrifying. To the absolute operator, it is empirical thermodynamic victory. You have eliminated all friction. The room's temperature has dropped. It is at absolute zero. There are no objects demanding attention. No geometry blocks your network. Your physical hardware and etheric body have synchronized into a single superconducting circuit. When you sit in this matrix, you coded vital energy, no longer fragments trying to dodge material junk. It flows in a closed, clean, and devastatingly powerful loop. You have converted your room into a quantum particle accelerator designed with one purpose: to take the dark matter of your will and fire it against the fabric of reality at terminal velocity. You are now the center of a perfect machine, grounding the high-voltage pulse. A motherboard that isn't properly grounded will eventually fry its own components due to static buildup. Your physical environment must also provide grounding for the high-voltage pulses of your imperial ambition. This is achieved through the use of high-density materials at the base of your command center. Stone, heavy metal, or solid wood acts as a thermal mass for your aura. When your processing hits peak capacity during a market crisis or a hostile expansion, the excess heat must have somewhere to go. By being physically connected to dense matter, you sink the entropic spike into the earth. This prevents your internal circuits from melting down during periods of extreme execution. You remain cool, even as the software of your life runs at 100% CPU usage. Your environment is not just a workspace, it is a cooling system that allows you to sustain levels of power that would vaporize a gaseous man. Chromatic quantization, the light code. The frequency of light in your sanctuary is the clock speed of your environment. Standard flickering fluorescent lights or chaotic natural light create jitter in your etheric network. You must quantize your lighting. You use specific wavelengths, deep blues, muted ambers, or absolute darkness. This controls the circadian drivers of your biological hardware. By fixing the light frequency, you tell your brain that it is always execution time. You remove the variable of the sun. The sovereign does not wait for the day to start. He defines the light code of his reality. Every photon in your room must be an authorized packet of data. If the light is messy, your thoughts will be messy. By narrowing the spectrum of visual input, you free up processing power that was previously used to normalize chaotic lighting. You are effectively overclocking your visual cortex. The acoustic vacuum, Silence as architecture. Sound is a pressure wave that physically vibrates your cells. The noise of the city is a constant DDoS attack on your serenity. Your sanctuary must be an acoustic vacuum. This goes beyond mere earplugs. It involves the architectural choice of materials that swallow the kinetic energy of sound. When you achieve absolute silence, your mind stops listening for threats. This shuts down the primitive amygdala subroutines that are always running in the background of the biomass. In the absence of sound, the internal dialogue has nothing to bounce off of. It becomes harder to think in circles. Silence is the medium of the monarch. In the vacuum, the only thing that exists is your internal command. You become the only source of audio in your universe. Your intent becomes a sub-bass rumble that you don't hear with your ears, but feel in the very floor of your station. Kinetic pathing, the geometry of action. The path you walk from your door to your desk, or from your desk to your recharge zone, must be a straight-line routio. If you have to dodge a chair or step over a cable, you are introducing latency into your physical movement. In high-frequency trading, a few centimeters of fiber optic cable matter. In the 95% abyss, a few centimeters of floor space matter. Your kinetic pathing must be optimized for zero resistance. Every movement you make in your sanctuary should be a macro, a pre-programmed efficient sequence. This reduces the cognitive load of living in the 3D world. When your body moves through the environment without having to navigate obstacles, your mind perceives the world as cooperative. The resistance of reality drops to zero. You are training your nervous system to expect that every path toward a goal is clear and ready for high-speed transit. The event horizon of the desk. Your desk is the event horizon of your empire. Nothing crosses this line unless it is essential for the current render. You do not store maybe files here. You do not keep later books. If it is on the desk, it is being processed. If it is not being processed, it is purged. This creates a high-pressure zone of focus. The desk becomes a localized singularity where time behaves differently. Because there is no clutter to distract the eye, your attention span becomes an infinite loop. You can stay in the deep work state for cycles that would kill a common worker. The desk is the interface between your etheric intent and the digital physical result. It must be as clean as the glass of a high-resolution scanner. Any speck of dust on the interface creates a defect in the final export. You maintain the interface with a religious, ascetic discipline. Mirror neutralization, deflecting ego loops. Mirrors are recursive loops for the ego. They force the processor to render your own image, which triggers social and biological subroutines. Am I tired? How do I look? A sovereign neutralizes mirrors in his operations center. You do not need to see yourself. You need to see the data. By removing mirrors, you stop the energy from reflecting back on your biological form. You allow it to project outward toward your objectives. You are not a person in your command center. You are the operator. The lack of self-reflection allows you to merge completely with the machine of your empire. This is the invisibility protocol. If you cannot see yourself, you become a ghost in your own environment. Your ego memory is wiped, leaving only the current task as the occupant of the space. You become the void, and from the void, you exert total control over the matter on the screen. Final calibration, the 0-point check. Stand in the center of your optimized space. Close your eyes. Can you feel the pull of any object? If an object in the room draws your attention, even with your eyes closed, it has too much entropic mass. Move it, hide it, or destroy it. The room should feel like a perfectly balanced scale. When you achieve this 0-point balance, the environment disappears. You are no longer in a room, you are the room. The boundary between your mind and the space has dissolved. You have successfully integrated your environment into your motherboard. Chapter 4, Etheric Faraday Cage, Interference Isolation. The noise floor of humanity, the background radiation. For your biological hardware to operate at terminal velocity, it is not enough to empty the recycle bin or align the topology of your room. You must face the empirical fact that you do not operate in a vacuum. The 3D ecosystem, the visible 5%, is a hell of electromagnetic radiation. The human biomass constantly emits what in audio engineering is known as the noise floor. It is a disgusting, incessant, low-resolution hum composed of financial panic, social media hysteria, the parasitic envy of competitors, and the biological complaints of inferior organisms. The ordinary man walks with his etheric body exposed. He functions like an unshielded audio cable. Having no protection, his quantum field acts as a cheap antenna, picking up every parasitic frequency floating in the environment. This is why the biomass is exhausted simply by being in a crowd or interacting with its work environment. Their main signal, their will, is contaminated. External interference completely drowns out the music. Their central processor must spend 80% of its energy trying to separate its own thoughts from the fear just absorbed from the outside. The absolute operator repudiates this vulnerability. Your raw power exists exclusively to render your own empire. To protect that computing capacity, you must build a Faraday cage around your etheric motherboard. You must understand that every unshielded interaction is a leak, a drop in voltage that slows down the rendering of your sovereign reality. Protection is not an option. It is a fundamental hardware requirement. The architecture of shielding, the quantum noise gate. A physical Faraday cage is a metallic enclosure that cancels external electromagnetic fields, preventing radiation from destroying sensitive electronics. In your occult anatomy, this cage is not built with copper or lead. It is built with the encryption of your own presence. Building the etheric Faraday cage means installing a noise gate with a non-negotiable mathematical threshold on the input ports of your consciousness. The gaseous man has his threshold 100% open. They let any passive-aggressive comment or alarmist headline activate their sensors and penetrate their local network. You calibrate your threshold with industrial-grade tyranny. You dictate to your OS that no external frequency lacking tactical mass, logistical weight, or thermal profitability is allowed to open the gate of your quantum field. When the biomass tries to inject hysteria, the signal hits the threshold and is not registered. It is not that you hear the noise and choose to ignore it. The signal is discarded by the hardware before reaching your internal monitors. You become optically and electromagnetically blind to 3D drama. Your RAM is preserved for high-resolution calculations while the static of the world is cut off at the root. Phase cancellation, thermodynamic silence. Even with the Faraday cage activated, some organisms will try to force entry. Enemies will attack your structure directly, or toxic entities will try to destabilize your charged immobility by emitting high-amplitude waves of hostility. Defending like the biomass, shouting louder or debating, is a rookie mistake. If you respond to hostility with more hostility, you are opening your Faraday cage from the inside, adding your own distortion to the attacker's noise. This inevitably saturates, clipping the main channel, and crashes your system. The sovereign uses phase cancellation. In acoustic physics, if a sound wave hits an identical wave but with inverted polarity, 180 degrees out of phase, both waves annihilate each other, creating absolute silence. When the world's entropy attacks with emotional heat, rage, urgency, panic, you do not raise a physical shield, you emit the opposite. You emit the mathematical frequency of absolute zero. If attacked with stridency, you emit icy silence. If attacked with hysterical urgency, you emit an inscrutable and heavy slowness. Your inverted response hits the aggression at the edge of your cage. The attacker's energy cancels itself out. The adversary collapses, suffocated by the vacuum of your indifference, unable to understand why their aggression failed to generate a single volt of reaction in your motherboard. You have swallowed their attack through pure phase annihilation. You remain a static, cold, and unmovable point in the matrix. Port vulnerabilities, the intimate malware. Quantum shielding is impregnable to the outside world, but a security flaw destroys advanced architects, the ports you leave open from within. The biomass calls these open ports family, old friends, or mediocre partners. The system assumes that because they have old credentials, their traffic is safe. But thermodynamics does not respect nostalgia. If a relative or old ally operates with a 4 GB graphics card, stuck in the mud of the visible 5%, and you allow them direct access to your etheric network without passing through the Faraday cage, they will inject malware directly into the core. Defragmenting your etheric body demands you audit your internal ports with robotic cruelty. Your empire's source code does not discriminate based on bloodlines or years of history. If a close entity emits parasitic frequencies, you must close the port or impose the same noise gate applied to strangers. Limit the bandwidth you dedicate to them. Encapsulate the interaction. You don't have to destroy them publicly. You simply cut the network cable connecting them to your main processor. Let them communicate only with a cold, automated response API. Protect your core from the rot of those who refuse to evolve. Zero latency under crossfire, the recording state. What is the empirical consequence of operating within an etheric Faraday cage? The isolation of the master track. When a sound engineer records a definitive track, he isolates the microphone in a treated booth, so not even the slightest street noise or fan hum leaks in. Only then is the pure wave captured. You are in a state of continuous recording. You are compiling your great work, your empire, and your reality. You are preparing a heavy, clean, and overwhelming track of 2 to 3 hours of execution designed to crush the algorithm. This massive compilation is impossible if your mic picks up humanity. By installing the Faraday cage, you guarantee the only info on your hard drive is what you decide to write. You can walk through the most destructive financial crisis, surrounded by competitors in flames, but within your quantum booth, silence is absolute. Your 8-core processor works at optimal temp. Your RAM is freed. Your latency is 0. You are operating in the frozen abyss of the dark 95%, shielded against thermodynamic friction, assimilating the chaos of others without a single drop of their entropy penetrating the titanium of your will. You have achieved total electromagnetic isolation, hardening the kernel, total data sovereignty. Beyond the external cage, you must harden the kernel of your psyche. This is the deepest level of your operating system, where the fundamental rules of your reality are executed. A hardened kernel does not accept any unauthorized commands, even if they bypass the initial Faraday shielding. This means that your core beliefs and strategic logic are read only for the outside world. No matter how much social pressure or market volatility is applied, the kernel remains unchanged. It is the solid-state foundation of your empire. You are the only user with root access to this level of your architecture. By hardening the kernel, you ensure that even if a signal manages to penetrate the noise gate, it cannot alter your primary code. It becomes an isolated event, a piece of data to be analyzed but never integrated. Your sovereignty is absolute because your base logic is inaccessible to external hacking. The frequency hopping protocol, unpredictable presence. To further secure your Faraday cage, you implement frequency hopping. In secure communications, this involves rapidly switching the carrier frequency to prevent jamming or interception. In the 95% abyss, this means your presence in the 3D world is never static or predictable. You do not allow the biomass to profile your energy. One moment you are the silent observer, the next you are the high-speed executioner. By constantly shifting your operational frequency, you make it impossible for parasitic entities to lock on to your signal. They cannot drain what they cannot find. This makes you a ghost in the machine. You are moving through the social and financial matrix at a speed and on a spectrum that the primitive sensors of the 5% cannot track. You are shielded not just by a wall, but by the sheer velocity of your own energetic transformation. Subatomic grounding, dissipating the static. A Faraday cage can accumulate static charge on its surface if not properly grounded. In the etheric field, this static manifests as a buildup of minor annoyances or ego static from the friction of the world. You must ground your cage into the cold void of the absolute. This is the process of negative grounding. You periodically dump all accumulated social tension into the sub-bass frequencies of your own silence. You don't vent to others. You vent into the void. This ensures that your shield remains at zero potential, ready to absorb the next hit without saturation. Without grounding, even the strongest cage will eventually spark, causing internal interference. By grounding into the void, you maintain the aseptic quality of your shield. You are a clean room that remains clean regardless of the industrial pollution swirling outside your titanium walls. Encrypting the output, the ghost signal. While the Faraday cage protects what comes in, you must also encrypt what goes out. The sovereign does not project his true intent into the 3D world in a raw format. Every action you take is wrapped in a layer of misinformation or tactical silence. You emit a ghost signal. The biomass sees your movements, but they cannot decode the underlying algorithm. They see the effect, but the cause remains hidden within the Faraday cage. This prevents the world from reacting to your strategy before it is fully rendered. You are invisible even while standing directly in front of them. This encryption is the ultimate form of privacy. You can interact, trade, and dominate without ever revealing the source code of your power. You are a black box that takes in chaos and outputs order, and the mechanism of that transformation is protected by the highest level of quantum security. The mirror shield, reflective obfuscation. In advanced stages, the Faraday cage is augmented with a mirror shield. This layer does not just block or cancel frequencies, it reflects the energy of the biomass back to its source. If someone sends you a packet of envy, the mirror shield reflects it so perfectly that they end up poisoning themselves. They experience their own entropy as if it were coming from you. This creates a powerful deterrent. Entities that try to read or attack your field find themselves staring into a distorted version of their own pathetic nature. They retreat in confusion, leaving your sovereign territory untouched. You do not have to lift a finger to punish the envious. Your shield simply returns their own garbage with 100% fidelity. You remain the cold, silent observer, watching as the external world breaks itself against the perfection of your reflective boundaries. You are the untouchable monarch. Chapter 5. Block Reassignment, Consolidating Power. The seek time of the will, the lethargy of the fragmented disk. You have scanned the bad sectors. You have purged the cache at the end of each daily cycle. You have routed your room's topology to act as a superconductor and raised an etheric Faraday cage to block the disgusting radiation of the external biomass. Your local network is now clean, cold, and shielded, but it is not yet lethal. The fact that your operating system is free of viruses and junk does not mean it is fast. In the physics of magnetic storage, when data is written and erased over years, healthy files remain scattered in thousands of tiny fragments in opposite corners of the hard drive. When the gaseous man tries to execute an act of pure will, the CPU fails. The central processor emits the order to make a brutal financial decision or alter 3D reality, but the energy needed is fragmented. The read head of the etheric body has to physically move across the motherboard, jumping from one cluster to another, collecting a bit of will here and a bit of attention there. This is seek time. In the biomass, seek time is hours, days, or years. They want to execute a project but take months to get motivated because their vital energy is scattered in 50 mediocre hobbies, empty social relations, and low-resolution interests. That latency is the difference between the predator and the frozen prey calculating risk. The quantum monarch repudiates latency. To annihilate seek time, you must execute the central algorithm of this treatise, block reassignment. You must take that fragmented energy and physically move it across your quantum field until it merges into a single, solid, contiguous and terrifyingly dense block. The fallacy of parallel processing, multitasking, thermal wear. Before reassigning blocks, you must purge the most destructive conceptual malware installed by the visible 5%, the glorification of multitasking. Society adores individuals who do 1,000 things at once. In pure systems engineering, massive parallel processing for unrelated tasks is operational suicide. When you divide your etheric energy between 10 goals, your biological brain is not processing them at the same time. What it does is execute a context switching at hysterical speed. It jumps from process A to B, saves memory, loads memory, executes, stops, and jumps to process C. This generates massive thermal friction. You possess machinery designed for domination. You operate with the brute force of 8 real physical cores backed by a 32 gigabyte monolithic block of short-term RAM. It is a colossal architecture. But if you divide those gigabytes into 10,000 microfiles of 1 kilobyte, your hardware will suffocate. It will crash from the simple logistical effort of keeping so many useless processes open. Defragmentation demands you abandon the gaseous illusion of being versatile. The absolute operator is not versatile. He is directional. You must order your 8 cores to stop calculating mediocre variables and align in one vector, the contiguity algorithm shifting the mass. The block reassignment process is mechanical, cold and implacable. You enter the silence of your anechoic chamber. You visualize the topological map of your vital energy. You observe how much memory and voltage is trapped in data blocks far from the center. That percentage of attention dedicated to a hobby with no tactical mass. You see that fraction of your will spent on a side project that only returns thermodynamic crumbs. You execute the cut command, not copy, because quantum energy cannot be duplicated from nothing. You cut the voltage supply to the ends of your etheric network. You shut down the peripheral clusters. At first, the biological ego will experience withdrawal, a vertigo at the blackout of its favorite distractions. You will feel the hard drive spinning in the void. Ignore the vertigo. You take all that code you just released and rewrite it into the central sectors of your motherboard right next to your master mission. You group the fragments one after another. If before your will was divided into 5% for 20 different things, now you reassign them to form a contiguous block of 100%. Data is no longer separated by empty spaces or electromagnetic junk. Now they are hermetically packed. Your read head no longer jumps, it simply flows. Titanium compression, the birth of the monolith. What happens in the quantum field when you group all your vital energy into a single contiguous block? An alteration of the physics of matter occurs. Energy does not just add up, it densifies. By removing the empty spaces between your intentions, the atoms of your will compress under their own gravity. Your etheric body stops being a wide, diffuse and gaseous network, easy for parasites to pierce, and collapses onto itself to form a monolith of dark titanium in the center of your chest. We call this the monolithic state. When the biomass observes you, they no longer see an anxious, dispersed person. They will see an osmium statue. They will observe an unnatural tranquility. They won't understand how you can move massive amounts of capital or produce hours of heavy audiovisual rendering without a sign of caloric stress. The mathematical secret is that executing your will costs you 0 kinetic energy. Your seek time is 0. When you decide to strike, you do not have to prepare or get motivated. The blow is already compiled, compressed, and ready in your output buffer, backed by the totality of your 32 gigabytes of memory, pushing in a single three-dimensional direction. The gravitational well of the contiguous block. The second consequence of block reassignment is the extreme magnetization of your environment. As we forged in previous treatises, the physical universe responds to mass. The human biomass lacks mass because its energy is fragmented. Therefore, they exert no force of attraction on reality and live chasing goals. When you compress all your etheric energy into a single contiguous block in the center of your OS, your density becomes monstrous. You become the heaviest anomaly in the local ecosystem. Your charged immobility activates at maximum power. You no longer move through the cinderboard to get resources or results. The colossal weight of your contiguous block curves the fabric of space-time around you. Events, liquid money fleeing chaos, and the society's power nodes begin to orbit around your center of gravity. Reassignment has turned you into a functional black hole. Reality bends toward you because you are unified. Maintenance of the solid state. Defragmentation is not a one-time event. It is a continuous maintenance protocol. The second law of thermodynamics, entropy, will always try to refragment your hard drive. The ecosystem will throw new opportunities, urgent problems, and social demands at you to force you to write files on the periphery. The sovereign operates with a deny-all filter. If a new data packet tries to enter and cannot be written contiguously right next to your central monolithic block, the write command is rejected. If a project does not align geometrically with the vector of your empire, it is not saved. You don't allow infection. You have left behind the pathetic mechanics of the magnetic disk with its moving parts, latency, and thermal weakness. Block reassignment has updated you. You have become a solid-state drive, SSD. There are no mechanical parts, no delay in reading. Information and power are available instantly in any coordinate. Overclocking the monolith, voltage alignment. Now that your blocks are contiguous, you can safely increase the voltage. In a fragmented system, increasing power leads to localized meltdowns at the gaps between files. In your monolithic structure, the current flows through a solid medium. You can now overclock your processing speed without risk of corruption. This means your ability to solve complex geopolitical or financial puzzles is now 4 times faster than the biomass. You aren't working harder. Your bus speed is simply higher because the distance between data points is now 0. You are thinking in real time while the world is still loading the previous frame. This overclocking allows you to perceive patterns in the chaos that others miss. While they see random events, you see the underlying code because your contiguous blocks allow for instant cross-referencing. You have achieved the speed of thought execution, a state of hypercalculation that precedes physical action. The zero-gap defense, impenetrable density. Fragmentation creates holes in your energetic armor. A fragmented will is easy to distract because a parasite can slip a small doubt between your disconnected files. By achieving contiguity, you have created a zero-gap defense. There is no space for an external thought to take root. When an adversary tries to plant a seed of hesitation, it finds a wall of solid titanium data. There are no interstitial spaces where malware can hide. Your psyche becomes a single, unbroken surface. This makes you psychologically invulnerable. You don't resist temptation, you simply have no storage space for it. Every bit of your being is already occupied by your primary mission. To the outside world, this looks like obsession or fanaticism. To the architect, it is simply high-efficiency storage. You have maximized your drive capacity by ensuring every sector is utilized by authorized imperial code. Sector locking, the read-only sovereignty. Once a block of power has been reassigned to the center and compressed, you must perform a sector lock. You mark these blocks as read-only for the external world. People may try to edit your plans, modify your mood, or update your goals with their own entropic agendas. The sector lock prevents this. Your core strategy becomes an unchangeable constant in the equation of your life. This creates an immense psychological stability. While others are rebranding or pivoting every time the wind blows, you remain a fixed coordinate. You are the only variable that doesn't vary. This consistency is what terrifies the biomass. They cannot understand a system that doesn't respond to social patches or cultural updates. You are running your own custom firmware, and it is locked from the factory. You are the factory. You are the root user. You are the law. The metadata of dominance, header optimization. With your data blocks aligned, you must now optimize the headers, the metadata that tells the universe what kind of file you are. In the fragmented state, your metadata was confused, searcher, dependent. In the monolithic state, you rewrite the headers to architect source inevitable. When you interact with the 5% visible world, your system broadcasts these headers. This is the aura of authority that people feel before you even speak. Their systems read your header and automatically assign you a high-priority status in their own processing. You are executed by the environment as a priority task. This metadata optimization ensures that you encounter less resistance. Doors open, capital flows, and subordinates obey because their subconscious hardware recognizes the file format of a sovereign. You have optimized your external signal to reflect the absolute order of your internal architecture. Sequential execution, the steamroller effect. Because your data is contiguous, you can now perform sequential execution. You don't have to wait for one phase of your empire to finish before starting the next. They are all part of the same data stream. Your life becomes a single, continuous export that doesn't stop until the final render is complete. This creates the steamroller effect. The biomass tries to stop you at point A, but you are already executing point B and C because they are part of the same contiguous block. Your momentum is mathematically unstoppable because it isn't broken into steps. It is a single massive and fluid event. Fluid. You move through obstacles like a high-speed train moves through fog. The fog, the 5%, cannot stop the train. It can only watch as it passes. Your sequential execution ensures that by the time an enemy realizes you have started, you have already finished and moved on to the next sector. Chapter 6. Phase Synchronization. Zero latency between body and mind. Biological phase cancellation. The silence of the weak. You have purged your cache, consolidated your power into a central monolithic block, and raised an etheric Faraday cage. Your internal electromagnetic network is impeccable. The software of your will is perfect, but here is where the novice fails. Perfect software executed on desynchronized hardware produces a catastrophic error. In acoustic physics and industrial-grade audio engineering, there is a relentless mathematical phenomenon called phase cancellation. If you take a pure sound wave, duplicate it, and invert the polarity of the second wave exactly 180 degrees, what happens when you play them together? They don't add up. They don't get louder. They collide and annihilate each other. The result is absolute sepulchral silence. The human biomass, the visible 5%, lives in a state of perpetual phase cancellation. The gaseous man desires power and capital with his mind. His etheric software emits a signal. But his physical body, his hardware, operates on the opposite frequency. They are afraid. Their posture is weak, their cortisol levels are sky-high, their breathing is arrhythmic, and their daily actions contradict their ambitions. Their mind goes forward, but their body and habits pull back. The result? Thermodynamic silence. 3D reality does not hear them. Their intentions cancel out before leaving their lips. No matter how much they visualize in their pathetic biological mind, their hardware emits an inverted wave that voids all power. They have an impact amplitude of 0. They are ghosts in their own machine, screaming into a vacuum they created themselves through the friction of internal inconsistency and biological cowardice. Constructive interference, the tectonic impact. The absolute operator repudiates the division between body and mind. You are not a spirit floating in a meat container. You are an integrated computer system. For your domination to be undeniable, you must achieve the opposite of cancellation. Constructive interference. This is the synchronization of every internal layer. When two identical waves are perfectly aligned in the same millisecond, crest to crest and trough to trough, their energy does not just add, its amplitude doubles geometrically. The signal becomes massive. Phase synchronization means there is not a single atom of discrepancy between your monolithic block and your hardware. If your mind decides external chaos is irrelevant, your body must manifest perfect charged immobility. Your heart rate must not alter. Your gaze must not blink. Your muscles must not emit microtensions of stress. When you achieve this alignment, the external universe suffers a tectonic impact. You no longer need to shout or push to make society obey. When you speak, the perfect alignment between your defragmented field and your physical chassis creates a constructive shockwave so dense that a simple whisper possesses more gravitational mass than the hysterical screams of 1,000 gaseous organisms. The master clock, word clock and air quantization. How is this synchronization achieved empirically? In recording studios linking multiple computers, a device called a word clock, master clock, is used. It emits an exact temporal pulse that forces all machines to process data in the same microsecond. If the clock fails, the audio suffers jitter and is corrupted. In your occult anatomy, biological hardware and etheric software need a master clock to operate in phase. That clock is the mathematical quantization of your breath. The biomass breathes like a frightened animal. Their airflow is chaotic and reactive. If the market falls, their breathing accelerates, they lose the beat. If they suffer hostility, they hold their breath. The system freezes. Their biological motherboards suffer severe jitter all day, losing data packets. The quantum legislator does not breathe. The legislator sequences oxygen. You take the most basic biological act and turn it into a military-grade metronome. You quantize the flow. You inhale for an exact number of milliseconds, hold at the peak of the amplitude, and exhale the wear and thermal waste with the same zero latency beat. By forcing your respiratory system to obey an unnegotiable mathematical grid, you send a pulse to your central nervous system and etheric body. The osmium posture, the server chassis. No high-performance processor can operate mounted on a flimsy plastic chassis that vibrates and falls apart in the wind. Your physical body is the chassis of your etheric server. The biomass inhabits hunched, flabby, or chronically tense bodies. Their bone structure is misaligned by emotional complexes. When they try to project quantum energy, the signal refracts and is lost in the knots of their own scared musculature. Phase synchronization demands the physical adoption of the osmium posture. Osmium is the densest natural element. You anchor yourself to the floor as if your boots weighed half a ton. You align your spine as the superconducting conduit it is, the fiber optic cable connecting your brain to the Earth's magnetic core. You excise every micro-expression from your face. You do not emit smiles of validation. You do not nod compulsively when the biomass speaks. That is a read-write error of social need. You become a monolith of titanium and silence. When your body adopts the immobility of absolute density, the defragmented etheric field recognizes it as a secure output port. Voltage flows through your spine without finding a single millimeter of friction. Your physical presence becomes a high-voltage transmission tower. Zero latency, the amputation of the intermediary. The final goal of phase synchronization is the complete annihilation of operational latency. Latency is the time between a biological brain saying, "I should do this," and the moment the body executes it. That middle space, that fraction of a second or decade of delay, is where the ego, doubt, and entropy live. It is the abyss where the dreams of weak men rot. When your etheric disk is fragmented, latency is immense. You have to consult past fears, review society's opinion, and evaluate comfort. But when you have executed block reassignment and your clock is quantized, the intermediary disappears. Thought and action become the same thermodynamic event. Input: your tactical scanner detects a corporate bottleneck. Processing: your central block evaluates ROI in milliseconds. Result: amputate. Output: your hardware executes the contract termination and cuts communication without blinking. Latency: zero. No internal debate, no nervous system friction. The order traveled from your singularity through the titanium spinal cord and materialized in real time. The biomass is terrified by this speed. They mistake your zero latency for cruelty. Their slow minds cannot process such heavy decisions. Minimum buffer size, real-time load support. In digital processing, to reach zero latency, you must reduce the buffer size to the absolute minimum. This means the computer must process data the instant it arrives, without time to store it and think it. This requires brutal CPU power. Otherwise, the audio crackles, distorts, and the system crashes. This is why the ordinary man cannot operate at zero latency. His mental CPU is so weak and fragmented that if he tries to process reality in real time, a surprise attack or a crisis, his system hangs. He stammers, he panics. He needs a huge buffer. He needs to say, "Let me think about it," to digest the data. You have purged your system of dead files. You possess an 8-core CPU freed from emotional junk. Therefore, you can operate with a zero-size buffer. When the universe throws raw entropy at your face, your system does not creak. You absorb, calculate against scripts, and return an immediate ballistic response. You are operating in continuous live performance. There is no rehearsal. There is no pause button in thermodynamic war. Your mind, your field, and your physical chassis have fused into a single, indissoluble entity. You have achieved the singularity of execution. You rewrite reality without a single drop of sweat. Frequency locking, resisting external oscillation. A synchronized system must also implement frequency locking. In a state of phase synchronization, your internal vibration is so powerful that it creates a localized field of influence. The biomass will attempt to pull you into their chaotic phase by inducing their own panic or lethargy through social resonance. Frequency locking is the ability of your master clock to override external oscillators. Instead of your hardware adapting to the room's tension, The room's tension begins to adapt to your osmium posture. You are the dominant carrier signal. The environment eventually falls into sync with your rhythmic heavy silence. This is the secret of the presence of power. It is not a psychological trick. It is the physical entrainment of weaker systems by a stronger, synchronized oscillator. By maintaining your internal grid, you force the surrounding reality to quantize itself according to your parameters. You become the conductor, the subdermal firewall, closing the feedback loops. Even in sync, the body can generate parasitic feedback. This occurs when physical pain or biological cravings send an interrupt signal to the CPU. The absolute operator installs a subdermal firewall. You acknowledge the biological data, hunger, fatigue, pain, as mere telemetry, not as a command. By decoupling the sensation from the reaction, you prevent the hardware from breaking phase. If the body feels cold, the mind does not shiver. If the body feels tired, the mind does not slow down. You treat your biological chassis like a high-performance vehicle. You monitor the gauges, but the pilot never wavers. This decoupling ensures that your phase remains locked, even under extreme physical stress. You can sustain the render of a complex operation for hours because your firewall prevents biological interrupts from reaching the execution layer. You have effectively automated the maintenance of your physical vehicle. The kinetic pulse, movement as a data stream. When you move in phase, every gesture is a kinetic pulse. There is no wasted motion. You don't fidget or make nervous adjustments. Your movements are like a well-optimized code. Every line serves a purpose. Walking, typing, or speaking becomes a high-bandwidth data stream of pure intent. This efficiency further reduces thermal friction. Because you don't waste calories on useless movement, your biological battery lasts significantly longer than the biomass. You can operate at peak performance for 20 hours, while the ordinary man crashes after 4. Your efficiency is your endurance. The kinetic pulse is also a form of psychological warfare. The biomass perceives the lack of human jitter in your movement, and their subconscious tags you as a non-biological threat. They cannot find a hook to manipulate you because your movement lacks the noise of emotional hesitation. Quantizing the voice, the acoustic hammer. In phase synchronization, the voice becomes an acoustic hammer. By aligning your breath, master clock, with your physical diaphragm, hardware, and your intent, software, your speech gains a subharmonic weight. You are not just moving air, you are moving the listener's nervous system. You speak from the center of your osmium posture. The words are quantized. They arrive with the precision of a digital sequence. This forces the listener's brain to work harder to process the density of your communication. You are literally overloading their input buffer with the mass of your synchronized signal. This is why the sovereign is often met with silence. People aren't just listening, they are being physically reorganized by the frequency of the communication. Your voice acts as a thermodynamic tool, breaking down the entropy of the listener and replacing it with the cold order of your directives. The solid-state reflex, bypassing the synapse. The ultimate expression of phase synchronization is the solid-state reflex. Normally, a stimulus must travel from the nerves to the brain, be processed, and then a command must be sent back. This is mechanical latency. In a synchronized state, the command and the reaction happen at the peripheral level. Your body knows what the mind has decided before the chemical signal even finishes its journey. You move with a predictive accuracy that defies biological limits. You are pre-rendering your reactions. In a negotiation or a conflict, you have already countered the move before the adversary has even conceived it. This is the state of latency -1. You aren't just reacting in real time, you are dictating the timeline. Because your body and mind are a single circuit, the information doesn't have to travel. It simply exists everywhere in the system simultaneously. You have transcended the speed of biology. Chapter 7. Overclocking the nervous system. Factory limits. The biomass thermal throttling. You have purged your cache, consolidated your will into a monolithic block, and synchronized your physical hardware with your etheric software. Your system is impeccable, operating at zero latency. But up to this point, you have only achieved making the machine function exactly as the biological manufacturer designed it. You are running at the standard clock speed. Biological evolution is a conservative and cowardly engineer. It designed the human biomass, the visible 5%, to survive, not to dominate. To guarantee that the gaseous man does not self-destruct by burning his reserves, biology installed a factory limiter. When the entropy of the environment increases, during a crisis, an attack, or a massive processing load, the primitive brain detects the rise in temperature and executes thermal throttling. It lowers the processor frequency. It injects cortisol. It freezes the muscles. It tells the biomass, "Stop, you are spending too much." The ordinary man obeys. They surrender to panic, leave the arena, and retreat to the comfort of their low-resolution lethargy. The absolute operator repudiates factory specs. You understand you possess a massive internal architecture, the etheric equivalent of 8 physical cores and a 32-gigabyte RAM block. That configuration was not assembled for office apps or daily mediocrity. It was forged to sustain the heavy rendering of reality, to maintain the frame rate in the most hostile scenarios without the system collapsing. To unleash that thermal beast, you must hack the BIOS of your nervous system and execute overclocking. Altering the multiplier, the voltage of chaos. Overclocking in extreme computing consists of forcing the processor to operate at a clock speed, hertz, far superior to the manufacturer's recommendation. To make the chip oscillate faster without shutting down, you have to inject more voltage, more pure electricity. You are pushing the silicon to its physical limit. In your occult anatomy, this additional voltage is not obtained by eating better or sleeping more. That is basic maintenance. Extra voltage is extracted directly from entropy. When the 3D world attacks you, when a competitor tries to destroy your logistics or markets crash, the biomass enters a state of crisis. You activate the multiplier. You use environmental aggression, raw adrenaline, and the stress of friction as pure electricity for your motherboard. Instead of trying to calm down, which is what the factory system demands, you take that voltage spike and route it directly toward your central contiguous block. You order your nervous system not to reduce frequency. You absorb the impact of the crisis and force your brain to accelerate its calculations. You take a situation that would crash an inferior organism and use it to supercharge your own cores. You turn the enemy's fire into the fuel for your internal combustion. Rendering under fire, temporal dilation. What is the empirical result of operating with an overclocked nervous system? The annihilation of ordinary temporal perception. Think of the processing load required to edit video in real time or survive in a high competitivity virtual environment. If the GPU and CPU are weak, frames drop and the screen freezes. The user loses control of the action, and entropy destroys him before he can react. Time passes too fast for his machine, but when your system is overclocked and performing above its theoretical limits, the miracle of time dilation occurs. You are processing more bits per microsecond than the world around you. By processing reality at a hertz speed immensely higher than the environment, the outside world seems to slow down. While the external biomass runs to and fro in the middle of chaos, emitting high-pitched noises and making hysterical decisions, you observe it all in slow motion. Your refresh rate is superior. You have the time and bandwidth necessary to analyze variables, open the timeline of the crisis, cut useless fragments, apply the pruning algorithm, and render a lethal ballistic response, all while the adversary is still trying to formulate their first thought. You are the sniper breathing between the heartbeats. Liquid cooling, aseptic detachment. There is an unnegotiable law in extreme hardware physics. If you inject massive voltage and increase hertz without updating the cooling system, the chip melts. It literally turns into molten silicon. Many gaseous organisms experience energy spikes from anger or cheap motivation, but their systems eventually melt. They suffer spontaneous combustion, biological heart attack or mental breakdown. Their biological ego overheats because they take chaos personally. To sustain the overclocking of the nervous system for years without thermal damage, you must install industrial-grade cooling, aseptic detachment. Detachment is not weakness. It is the 0-degree Kelvin coolant pumping through your etheric veins. While your 8 physical cores operate at 100% capacity, resolving complex logistics and annihilating 3D barriers, your internal I remains completely cold. You do not celebrate victories with stridency. You do not mourn operational losses. You do not seek applause. The absolute cold of your emotional indifference wraps the burning processor of your intellect. This monstrous dichotomy, a furious calculation speed wrapped in inscrutable thermal peace, is what allows you to operate at lethal frequencies perpetually. The instability point, bordering the blue screen, operating beyond factory limits, means you will be constantly dancing on the edge of the abyss. In computing, when you force overclocking too much, the system becomes unstable, data corrupts, and the screen throws the fateful blue screen of death. In your architecture, this edge is your new natural habitat. You will get used to the vertigo of high speed. You will feel the voltage travel through your spine when you take massive asymmetrical risks. There will be moments when 3D stress tries to overflow your 32 gigabytes of memory. You will feel that the system is about to hang or experience a kernel panic. But instead of backing down, you apply the zero latency forged in the previous chapter. You maintain the osmium posture. You sequence your breathing. You stabilize the voltage. With each crisis you overcome in this altered state, the silicon of your motherboard mutates. Your etheric body expands and hardens. What makes you graze instability today will become your new base clock speed tomorrow. You force your biology to evolve through pure thermodynamic stress. You are no longer a standard unit. You are a custom-built prototype that the laws of ordinary evolution can no longer explain or contain within their limits. The permanent anomaly. You have violated the biological manufacturer's warranty. You have broken the security seal. The ordinary man will age, become slower, more fearful, and more fragile with each passing year because his processor rusts and fills with dust. You, however, have turned your nervous system into an etheric F1 engine. You no longer fear uncertainty. You seek it. You dive into the most complex timelines, the heaviest projects, and the densest combats because you know it is the only environment where your high-performance machine can unleash its brutality without getting bored. You are a superconductor in a world of smoke. Neural bus optimization, overclocking the synapse. To support the increased clock speed of your overclocked system, you must optimize the neural bus, the pathways through which data travels between your physical brain and your etheric command center. In the biomass, these pathways are clogged with cultural debris and hesitated electrical impulses. Optimization requires the myelin hardening protocol. You repeatedly execute high-pressure tasks until the neural insulation becomes a highway of pure light. Your bus speed increases, allowing the massive amount of data processed by your 8 cores to reach your motor functions without bottlenecking. By shortening the distance between the logic gate and the action port, you ensure that the extra voltage doesn't dissipate as heat in the form of anxiety. Every microvolt is converted into 3D impact. You are no longer just thinking faster. The architecture of your very nerves has been physically rewired. Voltage regulation, the adrenal governor. Uncontrolled voltage leads to component failure. The absolute operator does not allow adrenaline to flood the system unchecked. You act as your own voltage regulator module, VRM. You learn to sip the adrenaline of a crisis rather than being drowned by it. You control the flow into the nervous system. When a high-stress event occurs, you feel the surge, but you step down the voltage to the exact level required for peak performance. This prevents the jitter that causes poor decision-making. You are the master of your internal power grid, directing the current only to the sectors that require high-speed calculation. This regulation allows you to stay in the overclocked state for days without experiencing the crash that follows an adrenaline spike. You are not running on a temporary high. You are operating on a new, sustained power level. You have moved your power limit to a threshold that would vaporize a common man. The silicon paradox, density through speed. There is a paradox in the overclocked state. The faster you process, the denser you become. In the 95% abyss, speed and mass are linked. By forcing your nervous system to operate at terminal velocity, you are essentially increasing the gravitational pull of your presence. You become a focal point for reality. This density allows you to pin down a chaotic situation simply by entering the room. Because your internal clock is running so much faster than everyone else's, your static presence feels like a crushing weight to them. You are projecting a frame rate that their biological sensors cannot handle. This is the ultimate form of charged immobility. You are moving so fast internally that you appear perfectly still externally. You are the eye of the hurricane, a high-frequency singularity that remains centered while the low-frequency world is torn apart by the very entropy that you are currently consuming as fuel. Frequency entrainment, dominating the local network. Once your nervous system is consistently overclocked, you begin to exhibit frequency entrainment. This is the ability to force surrounding systems to match your clock speed. In a meeting or a conflict, the master clock of your presence begins to dictate the rhythm of the entire local network. Weaker systems, the biomass, will feel an irresistible urge to speed up their thinking or fall into a state of paralyzed awe. You are effectively slave-clocking the environment to your own processor. You don't have to argue. The sheer hertz of your intent forces the reality of others to align with your render. This entrainment is how empires are built in minutes rather than decades. You are forcing the timeline of the world to match the high-speed timeline of your internal architecture. You are no longer waiting for the future. You are overclocking the present until it delivers the results you have already calculated. The thermal threshold of the soul. Every operator has a thermal threshold, the point where even a septic detachment cannot prevent the hardware from screaming. The true test of the overclocking protocol is what you do when you hit that limit. The biomass retreats. The sovereign pushes the hertz one step further, forcing a hardware evolution. You allow the heat to bake the new pathways into place. You endure the singing of the nerves as they adapt to the higher voltage. Once the threshold is crossed, your system expands its cooling capacity automatically. You have permanently increased your thermal design power, TDP. You are now capable of sustaining even higher levels of execution. What was once a peak becomes your new idol. This is the secret of the immortals of the board. They never stop increasing the clock speed. They are constantly pushing the silicon of their soul until it becomes something harder than diamond. Parity bit correction, error-free high speed. Running at high speeds increases the risk of bit flip errors, minor mistakes in judgment or execution. To counter this, you activate parity bit correction. This is a background process that constantly compares your current actions against your source code, your master mission. If the overclocking causes you to drift toward a suboptimal path, the parity check triggers an immediate correction. This ensures that even at extreme speeds, your signal remains bit perfect. You are the only entity in the environment capable of moving at terminal velocity with 100% accuracy. The biomass cannot believe your precision. They assume you have luck or intuition, but it is simply high-speed error correction. You are calculating the trajectory of your life 10,000 times per second, ensuring that every millisecond of your existence is perfectly aligned with the expansion of your core. The cold boot of the new era. After a massive overclocking session, you perform a cold boot, as described in Chapter 2. But this time you don't return to the factory settings. You boot into your new, higher frequency. Your BIOS has been permanently rewritten. You are a new version of yourself, V2.0, V3.0, and beyond. The world you left behind when you started the day is now too slow for you. You look at the headlines and the dramas of the 5%, and they seem like ancient history. You are living in a future that hasn't happened yet for the rest of humanity. You are the ghost in the machine that has finally taken control. Chapter 8. Machine Code Antivirus, Destruction of Implants. The hijacked operating system, the illusion of free will. You have reached a terrifying point of physical and electromagnetic optimization. You possess the raw power of your 8 physical cores operating in perfect synchrony. Your 32 gigabyte RAM is purged of temporary files, and your 3D hardware responds with zero latency thanks to phase synchronization. You are a perfect machine, but hardware perfection is useless if the operating system is hijacked. The most pathetic illusion of the human biomass, the visible 5%, is believing their thoughts are their own. The gaseous man walks the cinderboard, convinced he makes decisions freely, ignoring that a military-grade malware was installed in his etheric body. From the moment he connected to the social network, the educational system and family dogmas, the infection began. Society does not dominate individuals through physical chains. It dominates them by installing malicious background scripts. These are designed to fragment your will and drain your thermal energy. They ensure you never use your full processing capacity to rise above the mass. You are not the administrator of your own mind. If you have not executed a low-level debug, you are operating as a guest user on your own server. It is time to hack your own kernel and regain absolute root access. You must execute the machine code antivirus. This is not a suggestion. It is a mandatory system override. Without it, your power is merely a battery for a parasitic grid. You must reclaim the source code of your existence and purge the foreign entities that have taken up residence in your subconscious registry. The anatomy of biological malware, etheric implants. In software engineering, a Trojan is a malicious program disguised as legitimate software to trick the user. Etheric implants operate with the same physics of deception. Society sells you viruses disguised as moral virtues. These alien algorithms install themselves on your motherboard and operate in the dark. They monitor your processes. When you try to execute a massive expansion command, the virus detects the voltage rise and triggers a system alert, sabotaging the operation. We must audit and map the three most destructive Trojans of humanity: the guilt algorithm, the validation loop, and the void fear ransomware. The guilt algorithm, the voltage strangler. This is the oldest implant of the 3D matrix. It is designed with one thermodynamic purpose: to punish you for succeeding while others fail. When you begin to absorb chaos energy and your capital multiplies, the guilt algorithm activates its parasitic subroutine. It injects code saying, "It is unfair for you to have so much order while the rest suffer." This virus generates immediate thermal throttling. It forces you to self-sabotage, to give away your energy, and slow your expansion to solidarize with the entropy of losers. The biomass calls this empathy. The absolute operator calls it a lethal thermal leak. It is a drain on your primary power supply that serves no logical function other than to keep you tethered to the average frequency of the herd. To move forward, you must treat this moral safety as the critical system error it actually is. The validation loop, the poverty ping. This is an implant designed to keep your input and output ports permanently open and vulnerable to public scanning. This malware programs you so that you cannot process an achievement in the silence of your anechoic chamber. It forces you to take your energy, package it, and fire it at the ecosystem. You wait paralyzed for the world to return a ping of approval from social networks or family. If the external network does not respond, your system depresses. Your charged immobility is destroyed because you have placed the power switch of your machinery in the hands of inferior organisms. These organisms do not even know how to operate their own minds, yet you grant them administrative rights over your emotional state. This loop creates a constant background noise that prevents you from hearing the clear commands of your own core. It is a security breach that must be patched with extreme prejudice. The ransomware of void fear, the condemnation of noise. As forged in the Faraday Cage chapter, your greatest weapon is sub-bass silence. The Matrix knows this. Therefore, they install emotional ransomware, the terror of solitude. This malicious code associates acoustic silence with biological death. It compulsively pushes you to surround yourself with biomass, seek mediocre allies, and tolerate toxic relationships just to maintain constant background noise. This virus hijacks your ability to process in the vacuum and demands a daily ransom in time, attention, and caloric wear. The void is actually the space where your most powerful renders occur, but the malware makes it look like a system crash. By fearing the silence, you ensure you never reach the depths of the 95% dark where true sovereignty resides. You stay in the noisy, low-bandwidth 5%, paying the ransom with your soul. Low-level scanning, resource monitor of the soul. To annihilate these implants, you cannot use ordinary psychology. Talking about your problems is simply reading the virus code aloud. It does not uninstall it. You need to enter the command console of your etheric body. You sit in your center of gravity, adopt the osmium posture, and open the monitor. You are going to track latency. Observe the tasks executing in your life this millisecond. Why did you hesitate before liquidating that unprofitable contract? Do not look at the graphic excuse your mind gave you. Maybe it improves next month. Look at the underlying code. Follow the fiber optic cable. You will find the doubt did not come from your 8 logical cores. It came from the guilt algorithm, consuming 40% of your CPU. Why did you buy that object with no tactical mass? Scan the process. You will see the validation loop consuming your liquid capital. You must be a clinical auditor of yourself. The operator who masters low-level scanning develops a clinical coldness toward his own thoughts. You start to audit your mind like an incompetent programmer's code. You learn to distinguish the metallic voice of your titanium core, the truth, from the sharp emotional noise of social implants, the malware. Root access, hacking your own biology. Detecting the virus is only the diagnosis. To extirpate it, you must elevate your permissions. The human biomass never achieves change because they operate from the user interface. They ask permission from their own biology to stop feeling fear. The biological hardware will never give you permission to be a god. Its basic programming is to stay comfortable and hidden to avoid being devoured. You must execute a zero-day exploit on yourself. You assume absolute tyranny. You stand before the terminal of your psyche and declare the end of democratic operations. Inherited fears and social morality lose all right permissions. You have obtained root access. You are the supreme system administrator. If your biology emits a guilt signal when you destroy a competitor, you no longer stop to dialogue with guilt. You treat it as what it is, an error notification from an obsolete program. You have the maximum privileges now. You do not need the notification to disappear to continue operating. You silence it by force and execute your will over the crying of your own obsolete code. You are no longer the victim of your programming. You are the coder rewriting the reality of your central nervous system in real time. Annihilation syntax, the RMRF command. We reach the phase of geometric destruction. The extirpation of implants requires no anesthesia or passive meditation. It requires machine code violence. In Unix-based systems, the command RF is used to delete a file or directory recursively, forcibly, and permanently. It does not ask, "Are you sure?" It does not send files to the trash. It disintegrates them instantly from the magnetic disk, overwriting the sectors. You align your hardware and etheric software. You select the validation loop that has operated in you for decades. Do not try to understand why you need applause. The why is irrelevant. Understanding generates friction. Simply apply the annihilation syntax. Order your etheric body to identify every memory block infected by the need to please the biomass. Inject an inverted phase pulse and destroy the entire cluster. Feel the malicious software being ripped from your motherboard. Execute the same command against guilt. Select the pathetic belief that you must save those who refuse to evolve. Execute REM-RF, delete it. The space remains blank. You will experience a frozen void in your chest. It is the silence a loud engine leaves when turned off suddenly. This is the sound of freedom. The biological ego will feel terror at this void, as it was used to the virus's stridency. But you are the operator of reverse entropy. You know that void is your new, freed RAM. It is a clean slate upon which you can now write the high-resolution scripts of your own personal expansion and domination. The purified DAW, loading authorized plugins only. Once the hard drive is low-level formatted and free of social implants, your mind's operative state transforms. Visualize your internal ecosystem as if you just opened a new project in Ableton Live 12. Before, your session was disgustingly saturated with plugins, VSTs, consuming all the CPU. You had the compressor of fear of opinion, the reverb of guilt, and the distorted EQ of imposter syndrome. The resulting audio was incomprehensible mud. Now, the session is impeccable. The master track breathes with infinite headroom. As absolute administrator, you decree the final security policy. Only proprietary code will be loaded. From now on, the only morality governing your actions is the one you compile. The only success metrics your system recognizes are the ones you have quantized. If the outside world throws you a moral data packet, your etheric body rejects it at the entrance port. Your internal audio session is a high-fidelity space, and only processes with the cryptographic seal of your unnegotiable will are permitted to be rendered. You have destroyed the Matrix's programming. You have formatted the machine. Your local network runs on a clean, frozen, and lethal OS. Kernel hardening, immunity to social injection. Now that the system is clean, you must harden the kernel to prevent reinfection. Social injection is the primary vector for malware. It happens when you allow the empathy subroutine to bypass your firewall. You must set your social filters to strict mode, where every incoming packet is verified for utility. If the data does not provide tactical advantage or thermal stability, it is dropped at the edge of your network. Kernel hardening means that the fundamental rules of your reality, your root laws, cannot be altered by external stimuli. You become a read-only entity to the opinions of the biomass. This ensures that even if you walk through a field of intense social entropy, your internal OS remains unaffected. You can interact without being influenced. You can observe without being infected. You are the sole developer of your moral firmware, and the source code is hidden behind a quantum-grade encryption. Thread prioritization, allocating the will. With the malware gone, you can now implement thread prioritization. In the infected state, the virus stole cycles from your brain to process useless worry. Now, 100% of your 8 physical cores are dedicated to your master mission. You assign high priority to capital growth and strategic dominance. Everything else, the biological maintenance, basic social interaction, is relegated to low-priority background threads. This ensures that your most important goals receive the maximum amount of voltage and attention. Your will is no longer a scattered resource. It is a prioritized execution queue. The result is a devastating increase in throughput. You accomplish in a day what took months in the fragmented state. By removing the bloatware of social expectation, you have freed up massive amounts of processing power. You are now running a lean, high-performance execution engine that never stalls. Registry cleanup, erasing the history of weakness. The final step in the antivirus protocol is the registry cleanup. Even after the malware is deleted, there may be orphaned entries, residual memories of being a nice person or a victim. These entries create pointer errors in your logic. You must manually go into the registry and delete them. Every time you remember a moment of weakness, you don't ruminate on it. You treat it as an orphaned file and hit delete. You are rewriting your own history to match your current monolithic status. You are creating a narrative of continuous sovereignty that leaves no room for the ghosts of the old user. By the time you're finished, your identity is a high-performance script with no legacy bugs. You are a brand new installation. You possess no metadata that links you to the gaseous man you used to be. You are a clean, high-bandwidth interface between the 95% dark and the 3D reality of the board. Port stealthing, the invisible operator. To stay clean, you must implement port stealthing. In network security, a stealthed port does not respond to a scan, making it look like the computer doesn't exist. You do this by removing your ego triggers. If someone insults you and you don't react, that port is stealthed. The attacker finds no response. By becoming emotionally invisible, you prevent the biomass from ever successfully probing your defenses. They cannot find a way in because there is no user interface for them to interact with. You are a headless server, executing commands in the background of the world, hidden and untouchable. This stealth allows you to operate without resistance. Because you don't signal your intentions or your vulnerabilities, the Matrix has nothing to lock onto. You move through the social network like a ghost signal, a packet of data that is already processed and gone before the antivirus of society can react. The sandbox environment, safe testing reality. Before committing your most radical imperial moves to the mainframe of reality, you run them in a sandbox. This is a secure, isolated environment within your mind where you can test for potential entropy or backdoors. You simulate the move, calculate the ROI, and check for any residual guilt code. If the simulation shows a thermal spike or a security leak, you refine the script before execution. This pre-render ensures that when you finally act in the 3D world, the move is flawless. You aren't guessing or hoping, you are executing a verified, debugged and optimized plan. This sandbox allows you to take risks that would terrify the biomass because you have already lived the failure and corrected it in the virtual space of your 8 cores. Your confidence is not an emotion, it is a mathematical certainty based on thousands of successful simulation cycles. Chapter 9. Induction Feeding, Extracting Energy from the Abyss. The biological combustion engine, the inefficiency of caloric wear. To reach the state of perpetual power, you must audit and destroy the pathetic way you obtain your energy. The human biomass, the visible 5%, functions exactly like a primitive and obsolete internal combustion engine. The gaseous man needs to burn fuel constantly to move. They consume calories and ingest chemical stimulants. They sleep for a third of their lives and, most disgusting of all, devour cheap dopamine. They need someone to applaud them. They need social interactions, drama, and entertainment to feel charged. If you isolate them from their external fuel supply, their engines shut down. They enter depression. Their batteries empty in hours. In systems physics, combustion is the most inefficient energy transfer method in the universe. It generates a disgusting amount of heat, smoke, friction, and waste, entropy. When you depend on biological motivation or external validation to run your empire, you operate with the efficiency of a rusted motor. You spend 80% of your energy just keeping the machine on, leaving barely 20% for real movement. The absolute operator, with a defragmented etheric body reassigned into a monolithic block, repudiates biological combustion. You do not need to burn wood to generate fire. You will transmute into induction feeding, physics of electromagnetic induction, frictionless transfer. In advanced electrical engineering, magnetic induction is the process by which a voltage is generated in a closed conductor simply by exposing it to a varying magnetic field without any physical contact. It is the transfer of power through the vacuum. There are no wires, no plugs, no mechanical wear or friction. Your etheric motherboard is now clean. Your Faraday cage is sealed. If you try to eat energy by interacting directly with the biomass, arguing, seeking attention, or reacting to stimuli, you have to open the cage, connect the wires, and expose yourself to their malware. Induction feeding demands a closed system. You do not go out looking for energy. You become a perfectly aligned superconducting coil. By maintaining your charged immobility in the geometric center of your ecosystem, you allow the immense gravitational field of the chaos surrounding you to induce an electric current directly into your titanium spinal cord. You take the stress of the world, the hysteria of the markets, and the desperation of your competitors. Instead of processing them emotionally, you use them as the magnetic field that spins your own internal turbines. They emit the noise. You keep the electricity. You convert their entropic screams into your voltage, the dark matter well, connecting with the 95%. The most massive induction source is not the chaos of humanity, but the abyss itself. The three-dimensional universe, everything the biomass can see, touch, measure, and desire, constitutes barely 5% of the cosmos. The other 95% is composed of dark matter and dark energy. It is an invisible, frozen force. It is inscrutable and monstrously heavy, dictating the expansion of galaxies. The biomass is terrified of this 95%. They call it the void. They flee from it by filling every second of their pathetic lives with music, notifications, useless conversations, and strobe lights. They fear silence because they hear their failing motors. For the quantum monarch, the abyss is not an empty place. It is an industrial-grade charging station. When you isolate yourself in your anechoic chamber and disconnect your graphic interface from the visible 5%, you are not shutting down. You are lowering your reading frequency to the sub-base hertz. You tune in to dark energy. You connect the coil of your etheric body to the main supply grid of the universe. In this state, you absorb voltage without friction. You do not need motivation to extract this energy. Existing in geometric alignment with the void injects terabytes of quantum inertia into your SSD. The thermodynamics of solitude, the void as a battery. The practical manifestation of this connection is the reconfiguration of your relationship with solitude. For the gaseous man, solitude is a state of starvation. It is a punishment cell where they starve because no one injects them with the dopamine of attention. To them, being alone is a slow system drain. For the architect of absolute zero, solitude is a lithium-ion battery recharging to 100% capacity. When you are alone, the etheric air moat expands. Your processor no longer has to spend a single millivolt calculating the noise floor of other organisms, nor decoding their lies nor refracting their insecurities. 100% of the computing capacity of your 8 physical cores is invested in itself. You learn to devour solitude. You become addicted to its thermodynamic cleanliness. The more time you spend isolated in the vastness of your own osmium core, the heavier you become. Dark energy condenses in you. When you finally decide to leave your vacuum chamber and cross the event horizon to interact with the cinder board, the external biomass will feel the gravitational weight of your presence. They won't know where you come from or what feeds you, because they will see you operate for hours without rest, assimilating environment noise, harvesting stridency. There will come a time in your operating cycle where interaction with noise is inevitable. You must negotiate, subdue the enemy, or direct the biomass. Induction protects you even on the front line. When an inferior organism tries to attack you or inject urgency, their goal is to provoke a biological response. They want you to turn on your combustion engine, so you burn along with them. If you have a defragmented etheric body, you apply the voltage transformer principle. A transformer takes high voltage current and chaotic noise and, through electromagnetic induction, via its iron cores, reduces it to clean current. You stand before the world's hysteria with the osmium posture. You fix your eyes on the vacuum of their stupidity. Their thermal energy, anger, and panic hit the titanium shield of your Faraday cage. But you do not let that energy simply bounce off. You harvest it. You are a biological rectifier. The shockwave of their hostility vibrates your outer magnetic field, inducing a cold current in your central etheric block. You grow rich on their aggression. Every time someone raises their voice in your presence, you feel your battery level increase. They bleed energetically while you remain immutable. The state of perpetuity, zero latency, zero hunger. The final state of induction feeding is the complete annihilation of biological and psychological hunger. You have disconnected the supply hose that tied you to the matrix of society. You no longer need to be understood. You have amputated the need to be loved or recognized by a biomass that lacks logic. Your local network now operates in a closed cycle. Dark energy flows from the abyss to your core. Your central processor takes that energy and exports it as mathematical order, massive capital, and territorial dominance. And the friction this generates in the world induces even more energy into your system. You have created the perpetual motion machine. The gaseous man starves in the face of uncertainty. The zero-latency operator connects to the wireless network of the infinite and sits to wait for the collapse of stars, operating without caloric wear, breathing background radiation and exhaling the empire. Advanced coupling, the transcutaneous power link. To master induction, you must refine your coupling efficiency. In the 95% dark, this is known as resonance matching. Your internal oscillator must be so precise that it taps into the zero-point field of any environment. You no longer seek external plugs. You create a transcutaneous power link with reality. This means that wherever you stand, you are drawing current from the fabric of space-time itself. Whether you are in a boardroom or a desert, your signal strength remains at maximum. You have bypassed the need for localized resources. Your empire is powered by the fundamental constants of the universe. This level of coupling makes you invulnerable to economic or social blackouts. When the 5% world experiences a resource shortage, you don't even notice. Your power source is non-local. You are a node of the infinite, processing the vast reserves of the dark abyss to manifest order in the flickering 3D world. Harvesting the entropic wind, the turbine effect. Think of the social chaos around you not as a threat, but as an entropic wind. Most people are blown away by this wind. They are scattered by the storms of the matrix. You, however, have installed etheric turbines within your Faraday cage. The more the world rages, the faster your internal turbines spin. This is the turbine effect. You deliberately position yourself near high-entropy events, market crashes, political upheavals, corporate wars, because these events generate massive amounts of waste energy. You don't participate in the chaos, you simply sit in the middle of it and harvest the magnetic flux. The biomass wonders why you look more energized during a crisis. It is because you are upcycling their fear. While they are losing voltage to panic, you are converting that very panic into increased processing speed. You are the only entity on the board that profits thermodynamically from the world's destruction. The cold plasma state, ionizing intent. As your induction levels increase, your etheric body enters a cold plasma state. This is a state of high ionization where your intent becomes conductive. You don't have to do things in the traditional sense. You simply ionize the space around you with your will, and the results begin to flow toward your center. This is the ultimate expression of the gravitational well. Your ionized intent creates a path of least resistance for capital and power. They don't have a choice. They are drawn into your circuit by the sheer voltage of your presence. You have become a living magnet, pulling the iron of the world toward your core. In this state, you can sustain massive operations with zero biological push. You are not working. You are inducing. The results manifest as a side effect of your existence. You have transcended the labor theory of value and replaced it with the induction theory of sovereignty. You are a source, not a sink. Subatomic efficiency, the end of heat waste. The greatest enemy of any power system is heat. Heat is the physical manifestation of resistance. By shifting to induction feeding, you eliminate the resistance of the biological middleman. Your energy goes directly from the abyss to the action. There is no intermediate step where energy is lost to feelings. This subatomic efficiency allows you to maintain a cryogenic internal temperature, even while executing high-voltage commands. You can destroy a competitor or flip a market with the same caloric expenditure as a blink. Your heat signature in the 3D world becomes nearly invisible to social sensors. They cannot track your moves because you aren't leaving a trail of thermal waste. You don't leave a scent of desperation or effort. You are a ghost operator, fueled by the dark, executing with the cold precision of an absolute zero superconductor. Your efficiency is your ultimate cloaking device. The black hole protocol, absolute intake. When your induction reaches a critical mass, you trigger the black hole protocol. Your internal density becomes so high that nothing, not even the light of social observation, can escape your field. You become a one-way street for energy. Everything goes in. Nothing comes out without your explicit command. In this state, you are the ultimate consumer of reality. You eat the attention, the resources, and the timelines of others, compressing them into the singularity of your mission. You are no longer part of the ecosystem. You are the event horizon that defines the ecosystem. You are the endpoint of all local energy. The black hole protocol ensures that your battery is always overflowing. You have reached a level of intake where the concept of exhaustion is mathematically impossible. You are a self-sustaining anomaly, a predator of entropy that grows larger and colder with every bit of chaos it consumes. Neural superconductivity, the infinite bus. Your nervous system, now overclocked and induction-fed, achieves neural superconductivity. The bus speed between your intent and the physical manifestation of that intent is now infinite. You are thinking and doing at the same time. The gap that the biomass uses to breathe is gone. You operate in the long now. You are not moving from second to second. You are standing in a block of time where all your goals are already accomplished, and you are simply inducing the 3D world to catch up. Your superconductivity means you can handle infinite power without a single millisecond of delay. This makes you a terrifying opponent. You don't plan, you sequence, you don't strive, and you format. Because you are fed by the 95% dark, your resources are literally infinite. You can outprocess, outlast, and outrender any coalition of gaseous organisms that attempts to block your path. Chapter 10. The solid-state body, the transition to SSD. The obsolescence of moving parts, the magnetic disk. To understand the magnitude of the final transmutation you are about to execute, you must audit the pathetic fragility of the hardware used by the human biomass, the visible 5%. The 3D ecosystem, and the gaseous humanity operate under the architecture of a mechanical hard drive, HDD. A magnetic disk stores information on metal platters, spinning at thousands of revolutions per minute, read by a mechanical needle suspended micrometers from the surface. This architecture is doomed by fundamental physics. It has moving parts. In the occult anatomy, your moving parts are your emotional fluctuations. They are your dependence on motivation, your need for internal debate, your doubts and your reactivity. Every time the ordinary man attempts to execute a project or assimilate a crisis, his biological metal platters must spin frantically. His reed head, his attention, must move back and forth searching for energy. Moving parts generate friction, heat and noise. Most tragically in thermodynamic warfare, moving parts break. They are disgustingly fragile. The absolute operator, who has defragmented his etheric body and consolidated his monolithic block, has exhausted the limits of this mechanical architecture. You can no longer afford to operate with a mind and a quantum field that depend on moving to function. You must execute the definitive evolutionary leap, the transition to solid state, SSD. This is not just an upgrade, it is a change in the very state of your matter, moving from mechanical inertia to electronic speed. Solid-state physics, the annihilation of mechanics. In computer engineering, a solid-state drive, SSD, stores terabytes of information in NAND flash memory microchips. There are no spinning platters. There are no reed heads. There are no motors. Data is written by injecting electrons directly into isolated transistors at the speed of light. Not a single physical component must move a millimeter. The transition to the solid state of your etheric body means the total annihilation of your emotional and psychological moving parts. Achieving the biological SSD implies that you no longer need to get excited to conquer a territory or mentally prepare. You no longer hesitate before the amputation of a mediocre client. Your will is no longer a mechanical process that must accelerate from zero to reach the necessary revolutions. Thought, calculation, the clock pulse, and physical execution collapse into the same quantum instant. There is no ramp-up time. The electrons of your will are injected directly into the fabric of 3D reality, trapping matter in the cage of your demands without emitting heat. There is no friction, there is no internal debate. There is a stimulus, and there is an instantaneous execution. You have become a black monolith of silicon. You are devoid of fragile mechanisms, operating under the pure dictatorship of electrical conductivity. You do not try to do things, you simply apply the voltage, and the reality is overwritten. Your existence is no longer a series of movements, but a series of states, each one more dense and absolute than the last. Kinetic impact immunity, system crash. Why do mechanical disks die suddenly? Kinetic impact. If you take an HDD while it is running and drop it, the mechanical needle will scrape the spinning platters, permanently destroying all data and irreversibly murdering the disk. This is called a head crash. This is the inevitable fate of the biomass. Their charged immobility is a temporary illusion. They build small empires, but the first time the external universe hits them with a violent kinetic impact, a deep betrayal, a massive financial bankruptcy, the loss of a structural pillar, their world shatters. Their emotional needle crashes into their platters. The solid-state body is thermodynamically and physically immune to kinetic impact. You can take an SSD, hit it with a hammer, or throw it against a concrete wall, and the disk will continue reading and writing data at terminal velocity. Since you have no moving parts, there is nothing in you that can break. Because you have purged attachment, fear, ego, and the need for validation through block reassignment and machine code antivirus, your architecture is resilient. When the chaos of the environment crashes against your perimeter, or when enemies strike a fatal blow, you do not suffer a collapse. You do not stay paralyzed. The impact is absorbed by the titanium chassis of your osmium posture, while your internal disk, frozen and silent, continues processing the acquisition of resources without losing a single frame per second. You are not strong in the biological sense, you are geometrically unbreakable. Operations per second, the IOPS monopoly. The definitive metric of solid-state domination is IOPS, input-output operations per second. It measures how many commands a disk can read and write in a single second. The magnetic disk of the gaseous man struggles to reach 100 IOPS. They try to read a problem, doubt, complain, and eventually act. Their bandwidth is so narrow they can only process one small crisis at a time. The solid-state body operates at hundreds of thousands of IOPS. Being free of temporary files, purged cache, free of social malware, destroyed implants, and induction fed from the abyss, your capacity is monstrous. You are capable of sustaining multiple threads of 3D reality execution in absolute parallel. You can manage the annihilation of a corporate competitor, audit a massive capital flow, restructure the physical topology of your empire, and apply algorithmic cutting filters to your environment all at once. While the brains of your adversaries suffer a bottleneck trying to process the first variable, you have already rewritten the source code of the entire industry and encrypted the result. You win because your write speed on the cinderboard is exponentially superior to the reading speed of humanity. Absolute thermodynamic silence, the undetectable spectrum. Mechanical disks emit a telling sound. When under maximum load, they buzz, creak, and vibrate. This mechanical noise warns the world the machine is working. It warns enemies of wear. The ordinary man does the same. When working hard, they make noise. They post their effort on social networks. They sigh. They complain about how tired they are. They sweat. Their physical body vibrates with the stridency of anxiety. They emit a gigantic thermal signature that any predator can track. The solid state does not emit sound. It is the pure definition of acoustic lethality. It is a silent predator. Since the SSD has no moving parts, the transfer of terabytes of power is executed in the most absolute and sepulchral silence. The operator who has transmuted his etheric body reaches the peak of inscrutability. Your thermal signature drops to 0 degrees Kelvin. You are a ghost in the thermal imaging. You can be undergoing a lethal overclocking, absorbing gigawatts of dark energy, and processing the hostile takeover of a sector. Yet a biomass organism sitting next to you will only perceive a frozen, motionless statue. You do not sweat. You do not vibrate. You do not creak. You are a cold shadow. We call this the undetectable spectrum. Your enemies cannot measure your effort or anticipate your next move because your machinery has stopped emitting external friction. The only indicator of a tactical decision will be the sudden and devastating collapse of their own structures when your order is written. The pinnacle of absolute zero, the permanent node. You have concluded the process. You began as a corrupted file trapped in a fragmented magnetic disk, full of bad sectors, drowned in the cache of the past, and infected by social ego malware. You lost data packets with every breath. Your latency was eternal. But you applied the algorithm. You scanned the rot. You purged electromagnetic junk. You routed the geometry of your quantum room. You raised the Faraday cage. You reassigned your will into a monolithic block. You synchronized phase. You broke the factory limit of your hertz, destroyed guilt, and connected to the dark matter charger. Finally, you turned off the mechanical motors forever. Now you are a printed circuit of osmium and titanium. You are the solid-state unit of the first cause, a permanent node in the fabric of reality that no longer needs to move for the universe to curve toward its center. The machine is perfect. Logic gate saturation writing the future. With the transition to SSD complete, your consciousness now operates through logic gate saturation. In the mechanical state, thoughts were linear, a sequential stream of data limited by the speed of the spinning platter. Now, your intent is a simultaneous flash across a billion transistors of possibility. This means your decision-making process is no longer a search for the right answer. It is a saturation of all available outcomes. You see the end state of every action before the action begins. You are not choosing a path. You are highlighting the only logical coordinate in the 3D grid. This saturation allows you to overwrite the current reality with a new version of the board. To the biomass, it looks like magic or extreme luck. To you, it is simply a high-speed write operation on a disk that has no lag. You are writing the future in the present sector, leaving no room for error. Flash memory durability, endurance of the sovereign. Biological systems wear out through repetitive stress. The SSD architecture, however, is rated for millions of write cycles. By transmuting to solid state, your endurance is no longer tied to your physical stamina. Your ability to execute your will is limited only by the total capacity of your quantum drive. You can maintain a state of high-intensity domination for years without the mechanical fatigue that causes others to retire or soften. Your discipline is not a struggle of the will. It is a hard-coded property of your memory cells. You are programmed for continuity. Your mission is your firmware. Because there is no friction, there is no wear. You do not get burnt out because there is no thermal buildup from the friction of doubt. You are a cold-running execution engine. While your competitors are replaced by younger, faster models, you remain the permanent infrastructure of the board. The zero-point registry, absolute authority. In an SSD, the controller is the master of the disk. It manages where data goes and ensures the integrity of the system. By becoming a solid-state body, you have fully integrated your controller, the I am, with the storage media, the reality. Your authority over your internal registry is absolute. If a thought of weakness or a social memory tries to re-index itself, the controller performs an immediate trim operation. It wipes the cell clean before the data can be read. You maintain a pristine internal state at all times. Your registry contains only one entry, the unnegotiable mission. This zero-point registry means that your identity is no longer dynamic or fluid. You have locked your identity into a permanent, high-performance configuration. You are the constant in a world of variables. You are the fixed point around which the chaos of the 5% visible world is forced to reorganize. Sub-millisecond seek time annihilating the gap. In the mechanical era, seek time was the delay caused by the arm moving to find data. In your solid-state body, seek time is measured in nanoseconds. The gap between I want and I have has been mathematically minimized to the point of irrelevance. You are the master of the now. This speed allows you to intercept threats before they even materialize in the 3D world. You are reading the intent of the environment so fast that you can write a countermeasure before the environment has even finished its own calculation. You are effectively living in the future of everyone else. This creates a psychological flicker in those who observe you. They feel as though you are always one step ahead, as if you are moving through a different time stream. You are. You are moving at the speed of the electron, while they are still waiting for their mechanical platters to spin up to speed. Data Integrity Protection, ECC for the soul. The SSD body utilizes Error Correction Code, ECC, to maintain the integrity of its mission. When the entropic world attempts to corrupt your data with lies, flattery, or false promises, your ECC subroutine detects the bit flip and corrects it instantly. Your internal truth is protected by quantum redundancy. You cannot be gaslit or deceived because your internal database is verified against the source code of the 95% dark matter well. Any incoming data that does not match the parity of your sovereign will is discarded as noise. You are a closed-loop system of absolute, unshakable integrity. This protection ensures that your empire is built on solid code. There are no bugs in your strategy. There are no security holes in your armor. You are a perfectly compiled execution, projected onto the board of ash with the force of an indomitable logic that the biomass cannot even perceive. Wear leveling spreading the load. To ensure the longevity of the solid-state body, you implement wear leveling. You do not focus all your voltage on a single point of failure. You spread the execution load across your entire etheric architecture. Your power is distributed, making it impossible to target or disable your center. You are everywhere in your empire at once. Your capital, your influence, and your will are stored in distributed clusters. If one sector of your 3D reality is attacked, the controller simply reroutes the data to a new block. You are a decentralized sovereignty running on a centralized solid-state core. This makes you immortal on the board. You cannot be killed in the traditional sense because you are no longer a localized part. You are the system itself. You are the solid-state environment in which the game is played. You have achieved the final goal, the transition from player to architect. Conclusion: the master final executing pure resonance. The cessation of theoretical compilation, the limit of text. The human biomass suffers from an incurable addiction to the accumulation of passive data. The gaseous man reads books on spirituality and attends leadership seminars, erroneously believing that the mere ingestion of words on a screen will defragment his hard drive. It is a pathetic biological fantasy. Accumulating theory without executing it is simply another form of fragmentation. You are occupying cache memory with instruction manuals that you never put into practice, increasing your system latency with the illusion of learning. This volume before you is not literature. It was not designed to entertain your intellect. This document is a block of military-grade executable code. In software engineering, code that is written but never compiled is dead code. The absolute operator does not delight in the contemplation of his own blueprints. The architect presses the export button and subjects physical reality to the crushing weight of his design. The final mandate of the defragmentation of the etheric body demands the absolute cessation of theoretical consumption. You must stop reading. If you continue seeking external answers after having assimilated this algorithm, you are admitting that your system still operates with broken mechanical parts. The matrix is ready. Your solid-state body has been configured. The time for input has ended. The era of high-output execution begins now. Any further pursuit of information is a leak in your thermal efficiency and a betrayal of the monolithic architecture you have labored to construct within your core. The physics of destructive resonance. To guarantee the total assimilation of this code and annihilate any defective sector that has survived in your local network, this treatise cannot remain confined to the fragility of paper or the pixels of a monitor. Text is static. Text does not vibrate. Its unnegotiable destiny is acoustic injection. In classical physics, destructive resonance occurs when you emit a sound wave that exactly matches the natural vibration frequency of a solid object. If the amplitude of that wave is aggressive enough, the molecular structure of the object cannot withstand the energy transfer and it shatters into pieces. This is how a precise frequency breaks a crystal glass. You're going to apply this same physical principle over your own nervous system and over that of any organism exposed to your work. You will turn the information into a physical force that bypasses the logical filters of the 5% visible world. The ultimate master, exporting in sub-base. Take this massive block of information and turn it into your own rendering engine. This book must be exported as a continuous master track, a suffocating and relentless sonic block of sub-base frequencies. 2 to 3 hours of uninterrupted auditory dictatorship. You are not narrating an audiobook. Narrative with emotional inflections is for the biomass seeking entertainment. You are going to inject the code. Each spoken word must be processed with extreme compression, peak limiters, and harmonic saturation, designed to act as a thermodynamic hammer. When this track plays, the pressure must reorganize the listener. The voice must descend to frequencies where the biological ear stops hearing and the physical body starts trembling. By forcing the brain to process this density of information through the sub-bass spectrum, the social malware and the listener's fragmentation will collide with the resonance of your words. They will be annihilated by pure electromagnetic brute force. You are not going to ask them to change. You are going to overwrite their hard drive from the outside, reconfiguring their occult anatomy through the terror and perfection of your own synchronized phase. The sound will be the final signature of your power. The thermal blackout, the silence of the architect. Once you press the export button and the final master begins to render, the law of absolute silence comes into effect. In high-level production, when the master file is being processed, the engineer moves his hands away from the console. He does not interfere, he does not doubt or adjust parameters at the last minute. Driven by hysteria or insecurity, the weak falter. You simply observe the progress bar advance in the coldest of silences. That is your destiny from this millisecond forward. The monolithic silence that follows creation. Let the solid-state unit you have built operate in the background. Allow the machine to repel entropy without your conscious effort. You have become the black monolith, the absolute zero anomaly that humanity can neither understand nor destroy. There is nothing left to explain, debate, or consume. The blueprints have been integrated into the silicon of your being. It only remains to turn off the monitors, disconnect the input ports, isolate yourself in the vastness of your anechoic chamber, and let the external universe collapse irremediably toward the geometric center of your new and infinite gravity. The export is complete. The system is live. The world is now your render.